question for you. Slides. I don't know if it's easy enough to put a presentation on the wall. Good afternoon and welcome to the Escambia County Tourist Development Council meeting. Today is April 15th. Hope you got your tax returns in. It is a little bit after 3 o'clock. Apologize for the late. But if Danielle, you would please call the roll.
James Reeves,
Here.
Ashley Hoffberger,
Here.
Shirley Cronley,
Here.
David Bayer,
Here.
Matish Patel, should be on Teams, Charles Bayer,
Here.
Jennifer Breyer,
Here.
Brad Mullinex,
Here.
and Jason Nicholson.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum, so the meeting's officially called to order. Was this meeting properly advertised?
Yes, in the Pensacola News Journal on April 11th.
Great, thank you. All right, first item on the agenda is public forum. We have a lot of people here today, but I only have one person signed up to speak at public forum, and that's James Simpkins.
Yes.
I have people signed up to speak to other subjects, but for public forum. And Tom, I got your text earlier. Unfortunately, because we have a full house and a full agenda, we can't do a presentation unless you want to wait until the end of the meeting. We'll be happy to take a presentation, but we need to get through the agenda items. Otherwise, we have to limit the public forum to 3 minutes.
Understood.
Thanks. And- For review?
You need to give them the essence of it in your 3 minutes or so.
Okay.
Commodore Simpkins.
All right. Thank you all for hearing me this afternoon. My name is James Simpkins. I'm Commodore at the Pensacola Yacht Club, and I'm coming here today to request funding participation for our 2025 sailing and regatta program. And as you will see later on in the presentations, we have a number of events which draw regional and national participation. And so we are seeking funds up to $129,000. And this will be covering 5 to 7 of our larger events this year. We actually have a program every year with multiple events. But this year, we have some that and we'll have more next year as well, that we think are worthy of consideration for public participation. For the full year, we'll have 31 and a half total event days. We have another 20 and a half event days remaining. And between participants, their family, and other persons attending that event, we expect that for 2025 we'll have under just 4,000 heads and beds for all these events combined. For the events remaining this year, that'll be just over 3,100 heads and beds. So we are seeking assistance that will cover expenses including event insurance, publicity and marketing for these events, temporary infrastructure to support large crowds on site, support for race management, participant food, swag, and handouts, as well as entertainment for some of the larger events. We have a long history of actually providing events in Pensacola Bay since 1920, so over 100 years doing these events. We've gotten more and more sophisticated. If anybody remembers, in 2018, we actually hosted a youth regatta that attracted nearly 1,000 total visitors over 14 days. That generated calculated revenue of over $1.5 million per Pensacola Sports. That event alone, actually, we brought the American Magic leadership team for a kickoff event. With that one event, that set off a series of chain of events this town was able to take advantage of that led to American Magic being installed here on the bay today. So we'd like to grow in sophistication and scope, and so that's why we are seeking these funds. Any questions?
Thank you so much. And are there any questions? Mr. Reeves? And if you would please, everyone, when you speak, make sure your microphone's on and you speak into it. Thank you.
Do I have it now?
I hear you. Yes, sir.
I just want to kind of emphasize American Magic has been the catalyst for this, but give us an idea of the 52s, how many people are on those boats, and how many people do they bring with them each boat, or the total of the boats that come. And these are, some of these people have already come, but there are more coming like this.
Am I now alive? There we
Now
go.
we are.
Hot mic. So the GL52s, which you've seen on the bay for the past few months and most recently this weekend, each one of those boats has a total of 15 crew, and you can expect about 1.25, 1.5 person multiplier on top of that. So we're talking about a few hundred people just for that event. That ran 4 total days, probably in terms of event nights, more on the shoulders. We had one of the boats from San Diego here all the way from mid-December till now. I'm sure making a spectacle of themselves in Palafox Street all this time. So that gives you an idea of the economic benefit. We've had youth regattas. We just had a great one this past weekend that brought 75 children and their families and filled the bay, and for participants as far away as Switzerland, California, Wisconsin, New York, et cetera. So a very good draw, and it only grows from there.
Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. So it's not a lot of money. I mean, a lot of the requests are much bigger than this. Have you gotten funding from TDC before for events or for any of your activities?
This will be a first for us.
Okay. Is there more, do they not need to fill out like a request like these other entities? Okay,
They do, and they have submitted one to the county this past week, not in time for it to become an agenda item
Okay.
to be distributed at the meeting.
okay.
That's
Because
why
usually
they're
those are
speaking
due by
during
April
public.
1st, right?
I'm sorry?
Typically? Aren't they typically due by like April 1st for the requests?
Yes, to get into the annual budget
Right.
process,
Okay.
yes.
So did you all submit one to get within the annual process before April 1st?
No,
No?
no. We're new to this process, so we are learning.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Is this something that would go through us or through Pensacola Sports or both? What does that look like?
Well, it's a request for tourist development tax, and they've come to us, so if we want to direct them to Pensacola Sports, I guess we could, but they're here today.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if I may, the discussion on that with Ray Palmer was that they have other funds that they could help us in reimbursal, but it's certainly well helped. We had that in 2018, but that was, I think, right around $2,500.
Okay.
Within this dynamic, the number of events that we've had done this year, historically, we do multiple national, North American, and World Championships. We've already had one of each. That's not in this request. We have several coming, but as some of the board members have seen, we've got a very full slate coming in 6 and 27, but this is just for this end of the year, and frankly, we have not done well with press in that. We had a fantastic marketing person who sadly passed, and so we don't have the luxury of 1,800 hours of free work from Talbot Wilson, which Mr. Reeves knows quite well. So in that, the dynamic that Commodore mentioned to try to do this better, to get people more engaged and involved, and we take the brand around. So it's people obviously from Switzerland around with kids this past event. We think we can do better.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it would just be helpful to see like what your other sources of revenue are, and I guess with the document that we need with your request, that's what we would really need to see before we can make any decisions. So it'd
right.
be helpful to see that.
Thank you. We look forward to you taking a look at that. We submitted that in the last few days.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful.
Great.
We appreciate your time.
Yep. Any other questions or comments?
So will this come back on at the next agenda then for us to vote on?
If they are submitting the application to the county for us, then yes, we will put it
Okay.
on the next regular meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Tom, since you did speak, I'll need you to fill out a form. Get it to Danielle, please. Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up for public forum. Is there anyone here from the general public who would wish to speak today to anything tourism related? Seeing no one jump, this is a full house. I don't think we've ever had this many people at our meetings before, so welcome everyone. Next item of business is review and approval of board meeting minutes. You have the February 18th, 2025 meeting minutes and the February 13th, 2025 special meeting minutes. They were distributed in the packet.
I move
prior.
for approval of both sets.
So we have a motion from Mr. Reeves, a second from Councilwoman Breyer. Are there any changes? Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I read over these minutes, especially the ones from the special meeting, it reminded me of when I was in college and I worked for the student newspaper, and we talked about what a news story was versus what an editorial was, and if you editorialize too much, then it becomes not a news story anymore. And I really think our minutes need to kind of give the facts of what we did. And if you look at the special meeting under the, let's see, the General Chappie James Foundation Memorial Plaza, under the fifth paragraph, it says, there's a sentence in there that says, the TDC initially recommended a funding allocation of $750,000, which was subsequently rescinded amid mounting skepticism over whether the project would serve to attract the intended tourist traffic. I think that's a little bit of editorializing. I think our minutes, when I became a city councilman, I used to read the minutes and think, well, there's not much information in here. Why is there so little information? It's because most of it's caught on the video. And so if somebody wants all the details of what we do as a council, they go watch the video. If they want to see what we voted on, not necessarily while the discussion was, they would go to the video to see that. My problem with this is that there's just bits and pieces of what we said in there. There's no motion listed in here for what our original motion was. There is a substitute motion to send the letter Commissioner Ashley Hoffberger did, but there's no initial motion before that. So we're not even capturing the action that we're taking in these minutes. So for that reason, I will not be supporting these minutes, and I will vote against these until we get these correct. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments? Objections? Will we have a motion and a second? If there are no other objections, please show them adopted.
Show me as a vote of no.
Yes, please. Well, since we do have one objecting, we'll
both
go ahead and take the
sets?
vote. I'm sorry?
I said, is that objection to both sets or just one?
It's just well, I would imagine it'd be both. I've only read the second one in detail to find these particular issues, but I'm sure that the first one is written similarly. I just think we need to be more succinct in what we put in
So
minutes.
the answer is you object to both sets?
Yes.
All right. If there are no other objections, then please show them adopted. And I will get with staff to talk about the minutes. Thank you for that feedback. Next item on the agenda is status of funds available. Stephen Hall, you're hiding in the back.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Jeremy Pagaligan. I am a senior budget analyst with the Escambia County Budget Office. I'm here today to present the status of the TDT funds through March 2025. I believe the clerk's office has already provided you with a detailed breakdown of the expenditures. As of the end of March 2025, FY25 collections, including interest, total $7,429,502. This compares to $7,587,004 in collections through March 2024, reflecting a decrease of approximately $157,502 year over year. To give you a clearer picture, the total collections for FY25 through March represent 36.24% of the annual TDT budget, which is set at $20.5 million. On the expense side, total expenditures through March 2025 amount to approximately $8.14 million. Finally, the current TDT cash balance stands at $28.6 million through March 2025.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? No? Thank you, Jeremy. All right, moving on to the next section of our agenda, requests. The first item is the UWF football stadium, and we have Dave Scott and Dr. Martha Saunders here, and some other speakers, but they're here to present. Do you guys want to present and then have your speakers, or how do you want to It's probably best to speak,
Let's do that.
present first. Great.
They may
Welcome.
change their mind. I don't know.
Right.
Well, good afternoon. I have read a lot about this group, but I've never been before you. So thank you for hearing our proposal today, and we look forward to sharing it with you. Building on the record growth of the past decade, UWF is proposing a stadium construction plan that represents a transformative investment for the University of West Florida and Escambia County. The multi-use outdoor facility located on the UWF campus will significantly enhance the athletic department's capacity to serve students, the broader campus community, and Escambia County. This facility will be a community asset that can serve as a venue to host band competitions, outdoor concerts, high school football games, as well as other community events. Over a 5-year period, UWF Athletics has driven nearly $250 million in total economic output, while the university drives approximately $1.4 billion every year. Our growth brings people to this community for both short-term stays in many of our hotels and longer stays, as many of our students will become part of your workforce. UWF's Athletic Director Dave Scott is here to present the project. I also have with me Howard Reddy, our Vice President for University Advancement, who is overseeing the fundraising for the project, and Jeffrey Jerlick, the university's controller, who will answer any questions you may have about the funding model. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. As Dr. Saunders said, it's an honor to be here today to present on the multi-use football stadium facility. I'll go through some of the highlights from the application, and then we can have speakers and questions at that point. The Haas Center economic impact showed over a 5-year period. The football program had a total economic impact of $23.3 million. Along with the facility's construction would be over $124 million. The initial program goals and baseline listed, we were conservative. We're trying to project the future. After reviewing our data, we identified a way to adjust our baseline to include the spectators through using a program. We also feel that this upped it to 10,219 room nights, that our goal of 20% to 12,263 is still conservative, but one we can achieve. If you see a slide here that shows just one game's visitors that came to football. On a junior day, we had a couple that came from Naples, a young man that was looking to go to school here, had never been to Pensacola, Florida before, and had come to one of the games. So it's able to attract visitors from all over the state and the Midwest. The football stadium overview was increased capacity from 3,800, which is what we have now, in a temporary facility that we have to set up most of the facility, internet, restrooms, the whole bit, to move to around a 7,500 seat facility that we will grow. And one of the program goals was to go to 40%, was just to really 6,000. We think we can achieve more than that as we continue to grow as a university and as our athletic program grows. The multi-use stadium, as Dr. Saunders has mentioned, could be used for classics. It could be used for bowl games that at Division II are starting to happen. It could also be used for suites and clubs and conferences and events that might happen on campus or from the community. One of the things that we hope to do with the stadium is create a visitor center that would also attract for orientations, people coming to campus, create that central spot, the front porch for the university, that would also become a great opportunity for people to visit Pensacola. This presents a naming opportunity potential in this construction process. Media and marketing opportunities. We could do Visit Pensacola advertisements run during our Flow Sport broadcast, as well as placing in prominent places on the athletic website, video board PSAs, and boilerplate press releases that go along with the stadium construction. The stadium budget is approximately $45 million, which is $25 million of an internal institutional loan, $10 million private gift, and $10 million of fundraising. What we're asking for is roughly 4% of the total project cost. We feel like the stadium will be a transformational project not only for the community but for our university as we continue to grow, along with the potential at the improvements at the John R. Jones Park. We think this will do a lot for development of 9 Mile Road. We hope you will support your university as we continue to plan for intentional growth and add to tourism in our area. Thank you.
Thank you both. Do you guys want to hear from the speakers before we have discussion? Yes. All right. Well, we have 4 speakers signed up. I will start with Dr. Judy Bentz, our former university president. Welcome. And Judy, before you start, I do want to recognize our former mayor and House Majority Leader, Jerry Maygarden. Welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Chair Bear. And I appreciate speaking before the council this afternoon. I think I want to tell you that being the mother of football at the University of West Florida, nothing draws people like football. From the season we started to today, with a national championship in the middle, was at the university for 40 years, and I have never seen anything as transformational as football. I am from Panama City. I'm a Northwest Floridian. I knew that football would be good, but I never knew it would be this good for the university, for the community, for enrollment. I was astounded at alumni the first few years who came back who had not been here in 30 years. Alumni in wheelchairs making their last trip to the university. This is a reason, football is a reason for people to come back to the university. We have tens of thousands of alumni, and almost all of them like football. They bring their families, they bring their friends, they bring their kids, and we know it's just amazing to see. It was amazing, it still is, when I look around the stadium, the field that we have now, and I see people streaming in, all walks of life, all races, all economic classes. Everybody has a common ground in football. So I think the stadium is the next level. You have seen us fill up the baseball stadium. You've seen us fill up the bleachers that we have now, and it is the next stage in growth. Facilities matter. They matter to getting good football players. They matter to people coming to see the game. They matter to their parents when they're deciding on where their players want to, where they want to go. It is very important in the next step of growth to the University of West Florida. And there is nothing that will draw people like football, and a big stadium says you're serious. I appreciate your help. It will make a big difference, and you will have some skin in our game, and we will deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bentz. Next speaker is Dick Appleyard.
Thank you, Chairman Bear and Commission members. Today I'd like to share a few stories of heroes in our community and how you might be added to that list. I'm Dick Appleyard, longtime supporter of UWF, played basketball out there back when shorts were short. And I was one of the early supporters of the UWF football. As a boy, I had the pleasure of going out with President Crosby out to see the campus. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was a road trip to go out to the university. It tells you how the community has grown to where the university is. There were heroes at that time. Judge Crosby, Vince Wibbs, Pat Groner, and many others were heroes that helped to make that vision come true. Years later, we were a 2-year university when I went there, and during the 80s, freshmen were added, and the university became a 4-year institution. And if you follow the enrollment, it just skyrocketed after we became a 4-year university, partially because we had great presidents, I might add. But our community heroes at that time were in the legislature and in the community to see that we were expanded to 4-year. Today I'm here to support the UWF football stadium, but not my first stadium to promote in Pensacola. About 20 years ago, some new heroes came along named Studer and O'Sullivan, Fetterman, Wibbs, and others. And they challenged Pensacola to invest in a community maritime park and baseball stadium. There were a lot of people out there that doubted it. Would the stadium change our community? Would it revitalize our downtown Pensacola? The answer was yes, and so was the vote to build the stadium, and we all enjoy it to this day. In 2012, our hero just spoke, Judy Benz, formed the team to put together the football. A lot of people doubted that. She is the hero, along with Darren, who's a big supporter of it. We have football, and we have proven that stadiums do attract visitors, fans, families, teams, and students who stay at local hotels and eat at local restaurants. But stadiums need heroes. We have evidence that ballparks and stadiums change communities. Look at what happened in downtown Pensacola after the Maritime Park was built. Look at how it attracted business and people and the community. Investment in tourism tax dollars has many different choices. You can choose advertising, you can choose events, and you can choose a product. A product like a stadium is something for real, forever, and it continues to draw and use those tax dollars properly. In the future, when we all cheer the UWF National Football Championship, there will be heroes on the field, but there will be other heroes in the community. Those who had the vision to see how a stadium on the UWF campus could impact the community, the university, the visitors, the teams, and you all could be part of that team.
Thank you. Next speaker is Dave Cleveland.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Dave Cleveland. I'm a partner in High Point Hotel Corporation, owner and
Dave,
operator.
I don't know if your microphone's still on or if you'll just lift it up. Thank you.
My name is Dave Cleveland. I'm partner in High Point Hotel Corporation, owner and operator of several hotels in the Pensacola area. However, I come before you today wearing two hats. First, I am speaking to you as a friend and supporter of the university. And second, I'm coming to you as a fellow hotelier and bed tax collector. Having spent 20 years of service at UWF, with 10 years on the foundation board, followed by 10 years on the board of trustees, it was my pleasure to have a front row seat as the university's growth continued over those many years. It grew in stature, numbers, in every metric imaginable. All the while, UWF's impact on our local economy continued to grow commensurately. During my tenure on the BOT, it was also my great pleasure to serve on the Football Feasibility Committee. It was my pleasure to witness the birth of the program and its rapid rise to national prominence and championship contention. UWF football is a fantastic addition to the university as well as the entire Pensacola area, and its impact both culturally and economically is undeniable. However, my unique perspective on this proposal lies in my day job as a local hotelier and tourism development tax collector. As a local hotel operator, I've seen firsthand the impact that UWF has on our economy and more specifically on our industry. I know from my own experience, and I know several of you share that same experience, that the university is generating substantial levels of room nights, not only in the football program, but across all sports and across all academic departments and aspects of the campus. I also know from previous discussions with many of you that the litmus test for approval of a grant such as this is the documentation of generated room nights that can show that the bed tax investment will grow the economic pie and cause bed tax collections to continue to rise. I also know that in many cases, the applicant doesn't or perhaps can't provide that documentation. In this case, however, you have heard the UWF has documented well over 10,000 room nights annually just to the football program, a number that will undoubtedly grow exponentially when the stadium is completed, seating capacity is expanded, and an energized and ever-expanding alumni and fan base continues to be attracted to the games. Put simply, more people in more seats will undoubtedly lead to more heads and beds. For these reasons, as an ardent UWF supporter, but perhaps more importantly, as a fellow hotelier and tax collector, I wholeheartedly support this proposed grant and urge each of you to do the same. Your approval will provide for a sound investment of TDC dollars that will reap direct benefits to the industry for many years to come. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. All right. And our last speaker is Daryl Gooden.
Yes, sir. My name is Daryl Gooden. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for inviting us this afternoon. Really appreciate it. And I'm a lifelong resident of Pensacola, and I actually graduated from UWF back in 1973. So I look around here, there's probably some of y'all might have not even been born at that time. But way back in those days, it was kind of really out in the woods out there, and nobody really knew university was out there. And we always had a dream when I was going to school there, is someday we would get a football program, and it just went on and went on. We never did. And then about 12 years ago, when Dr. Benz came up with really the push to put a program together out there, I was jumped right in as one of the original founders out there, and really been pushing the program since then. And it's most of what I was going to say has already been said tonight. But we, from a startup football team from the very beginning to winning the national championship in 2019, we really set an NCAA record for such a small length of time from going from a startup to a national champion. So we got a good program going out there, and we just need to keep it going. And right now we call it a temporary stadium out there pretty much, and but yeah, we've had sellout crowds since the very beginning out there. And in a new stadium right now, it would increase our ability to grow our visitors and get them to come here and enhance our game day environment with not only the opponents and our visiting fans, but also the students out there. So here again, we're all about putting heads in beds just like you are. And really, I just wanted to talk today to let you know that we've raised quite a bit out there to get it going, and I'm actually the investor that put up the $10 million as a gift, and I just wanted y'all to know that I am fully in on this, because I've got a lot of money invested in it myself, As a matter of fact, I think I got all my savings and my life savings invested in it. So I'm really in. So if y'all will join us and help us out and put up some money, I'll watch your money just like I watch my own. And anyway, I thank y'all for letting me come talk to the board today, and if you can help us out, be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your generosity. Now, you better keep winning those national championships. All right. That is our last speaker that is signed up to speak to the subject. If there's anyone else here who wishes to speak to the subject, you may come up, but we need you to fill out a form. Seeing no one jump, open this up for discussion. So their request is for $2 million, and the packet has been presented. So open up for discussion. Council members?
Down here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forget, there's more people behind me.
We're always the one who wants to talk.
I know.
She was first, and I'll go.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. I actually think this is one of the most stable investments we can make. I think that all of us should be incredibly proud of UWF, and there's no doubt that we see it year after year bringing more and more people. I'm a proud graduate. My son's a proud graduate. My daughter is there now. My sister graduated. My brother graduated in '74, just so you know. So he came over when it was a 2-year also, and we've been proud of it the entire time. We've been proud of it watching. And I remember my dad's big complaint about me getting a degree there was that if you don't have a school that has a football team, then people won't know what your degree's worth. And I know that sounds silly, but the truth is that football alerts everybody to your school. And it's not that it's all about football, but it does bring that national spotlight. And I think we're seeing the testament to what has happened with your vision and bringing it forward. And I think that the fact that we're only being asked for $2 million out of a $45 million build goes to show that we're just partners in this in a kind of incremental way. But I think that I am fully in supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few comments. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Gooden. As someone who heads a nonprofit, we're always looking for people who are willing to give money, and that's a massive amount of money. It's great. We really appreciate you stepping forward. As a graduate of the university, I came to UWF in 1988. One of my fraternity brothers is out here sitting on the second row. We were in the same pledge class and Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity. I think our house was near where Chick-fil-A is now. I like to say Chick-fil-A. There's been other things that have come and gone, but it's pretty much stayed. But that area has grown so much, and it's because of the university. So much has been driven by what's happening out there. When I came to UWF, I was a 17-year-old freshman. I didn't turn 18 until I'd been there about a week in classes. I went to orientation I think a couple days before I started class. I had no idea what to expect when I got there. Just to give you a little background, I'd applied for several universities. I was not the best student. My SAT scores were not great. And so I looked for universities that I felt like I could excel in. And one of my criteria was that I was a very nerdy kid in high school, and they used to have these college books. They don't have those anymore. You could put in criteria and look and see what was, where you wanted to go. And one of the criteria was the female to male ratio. And as a very nerdy kid, I was looking for a school that had more females than males, so I'd have a chance of having a date. So that was one of my criteria. In addition to, I wanted to study marine biology, which of all the colleges I applied to, UNC Wilmington was one of the others, Old Dominion University in Virginia was another. That was my home state. I didn't want to go there anyway. I came down from Virginia, and UWF had a mobile marine biology lab, which when I got on campus never moved. It had broken down and did not move, but I learned some great things and switched my major a couple times and ended up getting 2 degrees out there. But we had to rally around soccer. And I love soccer. All 3 of my boys played soccer, but it is not something that draws in a large crowd of people. Football does. I was a student when Martha Saunders made her first, it's Martha Saunders Part 1 or 1.0, when she was an extraordinary faculty member out there, and I was the chair of the academic committee when we gave her the Distinguished Teaching Award. So you can imagine that I was quite excited to see her come back to the university for someone that had meant so much to the students out there. And I can say the same for her predecessor, for Judy Bentz. I had helped Judy early on when I was lobbying, because I also served as a lobbyist for the University of West Florida to help get money for archaeology, which is also another valuable program we have out there at the university. So much that happens in our city, we can relate to the university. And now with the addition of football, I think that we're drawing people back, just like was mentioned. Alumni are coming back to do that. We used to have the homecoming thing for soccer. We just didn't get a lot of people. Funny thing is, when I worked there, I worked for Morris Marks, who preceded Judy, and I guess Kavanaugh was in between there, Dr. Kavanaugh. But when I worked for Morris, he was very academic. He was not very as community focused as I would have liked him to have been. And I feel like since that time, Dr. Kavanaugh may have been a little too community-focused, but I feel like with Judy and now with Martha, we've got the right blend. And I always used to tell people that Judy was someone that was fine having a beer with you, because I went to the homecoming at the soccer field, and Judy was drinking a beer. I never saw Morris Marks drink a beer anywhere. I was just like, this is so cool. I can have a beer with the president. So I feel like the groundwork has been laid in such a great way, despite what our governor thinks about our university, we have an incredible university, and everyone in here is a student. I've had 3 students, all 3 of our boys have gone to the University of West Florida. I've got one who's graduated. He's working for the federal government now. Every day he comes in, he might not have a job, so that's kind of depressing, but he is using his degree. The other 2, I've got a musical theater major who has pretty much done everything he possibly can in musical theater. He's on student government. In full disclosure, I was a student government president like Jerry Maygarden, former mayor, so we share that in common. I kind of bled blue and green for a long time. It's probably still in there if you were to dig deep enough. But I just feel like this particular, again, my fellow council member said that it's a very small portion of the total budget. And I wish that the university didn't have to take out a $25 million, I think it's $25 million loan, but I think it's very fiscally conservative for you to only ask us for $2 million. I would have probably, I'd be willing to go higher depending on the amount that we have available. But I think this particular project, with the need we have for venue space, the need we have for special event space, whatever it happens to be, concert space, tournament space, having recently gone over to Tallahassee and had an event at their stadium, which obviously is much, much bigger, much, much more expensive. This is not going to be that stadium, but we can have events there. And I think the idea of having like a welcome center area there that welcomes you into the university, I think is just incredible. So I am obviously very much in support of this. And, again, I think that this university has been transformative. I'm so glad it located in Escambia County. One of the things I did when I was a student out there working, and I already mentioned the Voyager earlier, when I wrote articles, I wrote about the history of the university and how it got to Escambia County. And there was possibility it could have gone somewhere else. And I think we're just so fortunate, and it has shown recently in what has happened in the news, and thankfully the chairman of our Board of Trustees resigning, we've given that message that this university is important to us, and I strongly, strongly support this $2 million appropriation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Shirley?
I agree. I strongly support this. I think the university has done an excellent job in the football program. I was excited when it was mentioned that this would also be a community place that maybe high school events can go on and so forth. It will be a great addition to our community, and I praise you for thinking so big, Dr. Benz and Dr. Saunders, for you carrying it out. So go Argos.
Mr. Reeves?
I move we approve the request.
Second. We have a motion from Mr. Reeves, a second from Councilman Bear. Is there any further discussion? Jason?
Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of points that I just wanted to illustrate. First, I want to applaud the university for your growth trajectory. I moved to Pensacola, I think, in the mid-'80s, and it's just been on a skyrocket trajectory. It's outstanding to watch. I applaud Dr. Benz, Dr. Saunders, and the leadership team for the work that you've done to get us here. I just want to point out in the proposal that from football ticket sales alone, we're looking at, in 2028 post-construction, $1.6 million in taxable accommodations. That's about $84,000 annually in tourism development tax collections, and that's not inconsequential. That's real dollars. That replenishes the funds, and my fellow council members have heard me say before, there needs to be some component thereof where we're replacing that leading indicator of tourism development tax. In addition to the $2 million, there's an ask to the community partners. What is that number? What is the amount of the ask?
Good afternoon, council members. Stephen Hall, Management and Budget Services with the Board of County Commissioners. That additional ask is $5 million.
$5 million. And what's the total cost of construction for the football stadium?
We're estimating $45 million right now, but with everything that's going on,
got it. Thank you.
That'll probably climb.
And in the current scenario, and understanding that it's in a temporary format right now and probably not as conducive as a fully built-out, state-of-the-art facility, how often does the stadium hit capacity during the football season presently?
You might as well stay up there.
We have about 3,800 seats. Last year, we averaged about 4,500 people. So,
oh wow, I like
our
that.
problem is we don't have enough seats.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. And last question: if there were open windows in the athletic schedule in the football field, or the football stadium, as it were, could Escambia County or the Pensacola Sports Association book into that space?
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I just have a couple of remarks, and I'll make them quick because I know we have a lot of things to cover, but I just want to thank the university for the work they're doing. I believe in the university, and I support what you guys are doing. I love this project. I thank Mr. Gooden for his generosity to help make a big, huge gift to this university and this project. So keep doing what you're doing at the university. Thank you for everybody who's here today representing the university. And go Argos. So we do have a motion. And a second, if there's no other comments. Do you have a comment?
I do have a comment.
Yes, sir.
So I pose this question to the council. So you have $3.5 million in your public facility reserves. There is roughly almost $2 million in the first two pennies. And you also have 1.5 in the fourth cent. My recommendation to council would be to use the fourth cent, with the difference coming from the first 2 cents.
Do you think we could vote on the motion and then decide which pennies to use?
I do think that is cogent to the conversation.
Yes. Well, we do, obviously, we have the funds available to fund
I'm
it.
willing to make another motion right after that.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. No further discussion. Call for the vote. Danielle, if you would, please call the roll.
James Reeves,
Yes.
Ashley Hoffberger,
Yes.
Shirley Cronley,
Yes.
David Baer,
Yes.
Charles Baer,
Yes.
Jennifer Breyer,
Yes.
Brad Mullinex,
Yes.
and Jason Nicholson.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Hold on one moment,
Go
please. Is Tish on the line?
No,
we
he
can-
currently is not.
He is not, okay. All right, so the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Reeves, you have the floor?
I move that we take the money from wherever the exchequer suggests.
Wherever. We got it. Do we need a motion for that, or are we just good? Okay, thank you. All right, and I know we have a speaker with the next item who has to leave pretty quickly. Michael, the next item is John R. Jones Stadium Complex. Do you want Lee to go ahead and speak?
We're in good shape. She can speak at the end. We're good.
Okay, great.
Thank you for consideration, though.
Of course, thank you.
Make sure we got everybody here.
If y'all want to wait just like 2 seconds for the...
Absolutely.
I couldn't figure out where the lights were coming and
That
going
is.
from. And it's this, really.
Is this in your district?
Right outside. Literally across the street. But I got this.
All right. You good,
All
Adam?
right.
All right. Thank you. And
Thank you for allotting me the time to speak today. I submitted this presentation in advance and hope you may have had time to review it in advance of today's meeting. In an effort to stay concise, I'm not going to read the presentation verbatim. We do have a couple guest speakers with us with lacrosse, along with Northeast Pensacola baseball, and one is the head coach at Catholic High School lacrosse, and she's got a big playoff game this evening, so we're going to make sure we get her out of here by 4 o'clock, so I will try to expedite a little bit. Also with us is Miss Laura McCullers from Pensacola Sports to answer any questions about sports tourism or economic impact, along with Stephen Hall, Mr. Money. So again, and this is a tough act to follow. Dr. Saunders taught me in 1998 at the University of West Florida before I went to work at Pensacola Sports for Miss Cronley. She was an excellent public relations teacher, and I kind of bleed blue and green as well, Mr. Bear. So I'm a graduate of 1998. So again, John R. Jones is an existing facility on 9 Mile Road, and if you, Adam, you'll start thumbing through this. Sports tourism has not slumped, and I'll use some baseball terms. It has not went in a slump. Sports tourism has stood the test of time. You'll see in the chart, even when the economy has slumped, sports tourism has stayed the course. Folks will go see their families and kids and grandchildren play sports. That is a proven fact across the state, across the country. In addition to that, sports organizers and families are trending towards spending more money per event, per trip as they travel. Again, these are derived from sports ETA, tourism economics, and a lot of groups that Mr. Ray Palmer visits and does research that Ms. McCullers has pulled these numbers from. Again, families are traveling for sports tourism to see their kids, grandkids compete, treating it as vacations, but also sports organizers and the visitors are spending more in at each town they go to. In addition to the economy, jobs are created. If you'll thumb through this, you'll see jobs created across the country by sports tourism sector. Again, not only is it creating economic impact to the said location that the event is held in, it's a job producer as well. Why Florida? If you'll turn to the map and thumb through this, Florida is the #1 state in the country for sports tourism. That's not myth, that's fact. Why Florida? Some of the obvious, I'm going to ask the question, why Florida? Why Florida? Water, beaches, southern hospitality, and awesome venues. And in addition to the awesome venues across the state of Florida, you can participate in sports 12 months out of the year. 12 months out of the year, you can host sporting events here where nothing gets up north in the Northeast and where it's freezing, but you can't do that in every place. That's why Florida. If you keep going, Adam, to the next chart, the spreadsheet that shows statistics, sports tourism statistics, each one of these sports has grown and actually going back to participation levels, pre-COVID levels. You'll see baseball, soccer, flag football, tackle football, cheerleading, softball, and lacrosse alike. These are all sports that can be hosted at John R. Jones Sports facility on 9 Mile Road. We can host all of these. We've already doing some of them, but we can certainly enhance this at the John R. Jones facility. Project details. Project details. The existing facility has 18 baseball fields, softball fields collection, 18, call it 18 diamonds, along with 2 rectangular multi-use fields and a football field. All suitable for ranging from sports, as I just mentioned on the previous page, from 5 and 6-year-olds all the way up to adult senior leagues. Don't forget the adult seniors because we have adult softball, kickball, flag football, and various sports. In prior studies, maybe other locations weren't exactly convenient. This is a very convenient location located in the center of 9 Mile Road, hub of Pensacola. As the prior presentation talked about UWF. UWF used to be in a place 9 Mile Road. It used to be Cranford's Barbecue and Hardy's when I went there. Now it's a hub of activity. You've got plenty of egress and ingress into the facility, very safe. 23 hotel properties within 7 miles of John R. Jones. I want to make sure you hear that. 23 hotel properties within 7 miles. And as folks that I've grown up here, you're basically 25 minutes from anywhere, Pensacola Beach included. Pensacola Beach, approximately 25 minutes, depending on how you catch the traffic. You're 15 minutes from the Pensacola International Airport, and a ton of restaurants and retail nearby. We have already put over $2 million in the last 3 years into upgrading the light system at this ballpark and the total facility to LED, which is a big factor in these tournaments, and it also decreases overall costs. And the parking, there's ample parking, and with the new design, there will be additional parking with upgraded parking. Other facility details, first and foremost, we're not searching for a piece of land. We already have the property. It's our ballpark. It's Escambia County's ballpark. We own it. We're not looking for a study to go out and find a piece of property. It's a proven location. Artificial turf conversions. Why would it be so beneficial? So artificial turf provides a consistent surface to play on. When you're playing tournament baseball, tournament lacrosse, or going out of town to compete, you want to know you're competing on a consistent surface that doesn't have a lot of transition time between games. But when you're traveling as a family, you want to get your games in for what you've paid for. You don't want to be at the facility till midnight with rain delays and so forth. This artificial turf product provides a consistent play, field surface, but it also provides a high level of certainty you're going to get your games in when you're traveling out of town, spending a lot of money on food and hotel to get your games in. Again, from my perspective, it's less maintenance. I'm not going to sit here and tell you there's not going to be games during the week. There will be games during the week. But with this surface, you still have a consistent service for recreation, baseball, lacrosse, football, but the same level of competition fields on the weekends with less maintenance, frankly, less maintenance in the same level of turf, same level of competition turf. And it's a consistent and safe. I left this out in the presentation. The other part of that is it's a safe field of play. In a baseball, you don't have a lot of bad hops that catch you in the jaw. And in lacrosse, you're not creating divots in the field like you might have on a natural surface. You have a consistent level, so it's a safer level of play as well. Flipping through, a prior speaker said the basic litmus test is heads and beds. Laura and the team from Pensacola Sports has provided several pages of what it would look like from a 2-day baseball tournament to a 4 or 5-day baseball tournament to a 2 and 1 day lacrosse event. It's the return on the investment. I know your committee has to judge this. Laura, Ray Palmer, and the folks from Pensacola Sports could go on and on about providing you return on investment heads and beds. This is a fact that they have pulled many different studies from. And I will say, in the travel sports world, you have a lot of 2-day tournaments that travel on Friday night, Friday afternoon, hit the road, and play Saturday and Sunday. That's during the school year, most likely, during the school year. But then come summertime, you have a lot of options to run 4 and 5-day tournaments. So some of this is based on 4 or 5-day tournaments, but we have identified 51 tournament dates, some a collection of summer tournaments when folks are out of school, and then some during the school year, which we would be working with our local nonprofit groups that are running recreation sports, and we've identified those potential dates. Again, that goes back to the artificial turf. Easy to do, very hard to do when you're dealing with clay and grass and fertilizer and mowing, much easier to do when you're dealing with artificial turf. Staying competitive, and I'll briefly go through this. We wanted to include some of our competitors to our east and west: Daphne, Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Dothan, Alabama, Panama City. Saraland just completed a brand new turf facility. Fort Walton Beach has upgraded. These are competition to us. These are folks that have invested in the turf facility. I'm not going to sit here and say anything bad about Dothan, Alabama, and peanut country over in Dothan, or Daphne, but I feel that we present Southern hospitality, beaches, and a whole lot of natural resources to be ultra competitive with them. And Adam Reed and I, our deputy director, were speaking. if this happens and they bring this to fruition and have 20 artificial fields, we will be the largest turf facility offering the most amount of fields in this entire region, not even close. And I've listed our competitors here, and I believe with that option of having the largest facility with hospitality industry and retail industry, we certainly can make a big deal, and to steal another term, it can be a big game changer. Again, we've put a lot of economic impact, return on investment charts in here. Project budget. Adam, if you'll flip to the project budget. This is a working estimation. We have done the research of about what it would cost per turf field. That's based on the length of the baseball fields. You had to start somewhere, so we've taken the length of the baseball fields and the square footage of the existing baseball fields, and obviously we know the distance of the football fields. And we've worked with vendors to get that estimated cost. Thus, the number one ticket item being the artificial turfing of the fields at $20 million. The other costs are aesthetics, upgrades to concessions, and facade work, and sidewalk landscaping work, but the number one ticket item being the turf fields. That's not a number we just dreamt up. That is based on experience, research with others that have done it across this region, and talking to vendors that do this service based on square footage, field lengths, and so forth. The one thing I want to point out too, this is a one-time ask. The Parks and Recreation budget we're already taking care of the facility on an annual basis on maintenance and utility costs and so forth. With that said, a lot of these costs are going to go down. Fertilizer, irrigation, mowing cost. We've already put the LED lights in, so those costs are already coming down with LEDs. But a lot of our annual costs will go down, but this is a one-time request to TDC. This will not be something I would be coming back for, asking for down the road. I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. We've got plenty of support for this with event organizers from 2D Sports, which is a baseball event organizing group, USSSA, which does several sports, the hotel industry. We have several supporting letters. I believe the folks from UWF, a few might still be here, but University of West Florida, they used to do a huge softball event called the Spring Fling. Miss Cronley and I probably have worked on it a long time ago. They used to bring in 80, 90 teams per week for 4 weeks straight to run women's college softball from spring break teams from the Northeast and Midwest. They haven't done that in years. This is the type facility that can facilitate that, and it doesn't conflict with nighttime events because it's all during the morning and daytime. Again, Dave Scott and I have talked about this along with Mr. Llewellyn, the athletic director that supports this project as well from Pensacola State College. So that I don't make her late for her lacrosse game and her big playoff game tonight, I would like to introduce Ms. Lee Frosch, which is a director with Five Flags Lacrosse, which runs a local lacrosse program at this facility, to say a few words, followed by Mr. Buck, which is the president of Northeast Pensacola Baseball, just to say a few words in support as well.
Great. Thank you. Welcome, Coach, and good luck tonight.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak to you today on behalf of For Lacrosse. As Michael said, I'm Lee Frosch, and this is my counterpart, Mark Hollis. We started our program, we're in our 8th year of running a youth lacrosse program in Pensacola. We started it so that we could help feed the high schools and with kids that have been playing lacrosse going up from kindergarten to 8th grade. But what I wanted to share today was to talk about the growth of lacrosse and the events that are taking place right now, so you guys all have a better understanding of how we can support, how making improvements to John R. Jones would ultimately help Pensacola and grow tourism. Currently, we have the Northern Gulf Lacrosse League, which stretches from Louisiana all the way to the 30A area. There are 9 clubs in this league. We come together in the spring and in the fall, and we play in events. Each club has about, it's kindergarten to 8th grade. We all have probably about 8 to 10 teams in the club. It's boys and girls, and we travel. And what we do is we come together on the weekends and we all play in the same location. So when we host an event, all 9 clubs are coming. That's bringing in roughly 100 to 150 families per club coming into Pensacola. which is great. We had an event the beginning of March and hosted the event. It was a success, and being able to play on turf, allows us not to sweat before, depending on whether or not the rain is coming, and we don't want to have to cancel an event, due to the weather that could be going on in the area. The other thing about Pensacola is that it's central. It's a central location for all of these clubs. So all of the families do love coming here because they don't have to travel as far. When I have 38 families traveling all the way to Mobile for, a 1 or 2 day event, they'd prefer to come here, and they'd prefer to be able to stay in hotel rooms here. In addition to our events, there are other events that are taking place in the lacrosse world, but they're not taking place here because of not having a facility that has turf fields. Just this past weekend at the Public Sports Park, there was the Southwestern Lacrosse League Regional Championships for women's lacrosse that took place. There were 12 college teams that came and played at that facility all weekend long. It would have been an awesome opportunity for them to come to Pensacola. I have a friend that coaches one of the teams, and she was super bummed not to come here. In addition to that, there's a boys tournament that is being hosted by a local lacrosse company here. They're going to Mobile because we don't have the turf facility that they want to be able to use. In addition, I was aware that NAIA men's lacrosse hosted a national championship here for 2 years, and this year they're going to another location because they wanted a turf facility. So these are just a couple of examples, but I've traveled all over with my daughter and my son who've played for club teams. We've traveled everywhere, and it's pretty awesome when you go to these other locations, but those locations don't have what Pensacola has. And I know that if it's built, I know it'll come for sure to be able to have these teams, whether they're college, whether it's youth, whether it's high school. To have that ability to come here would be pretty incredible for Pensacola. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, and go Crusaders tonight. If I could introduce Mr. Buck, President of the Youth Association of Northeast Pensacola, otherwise known as NEP Baseball.
Welcome, Mr. Buck.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for taking the time today to hear us and entertain our proposal. My name is John Buck. I serve as the President of Northeast Pensacola Baseball and Softball, otherwise YANEP, Youth Association Northeast Pensacola, at John R. Jones Jr. Park, located on 9 Mile Road. Sorry, my notes are on my phone, so if you see me looking at my phone, I'm not texting and talking. During my time coaching my children and traveling to various locations throughout the southern part of the United States, I have noticed that Pensacola is missing one main thing in youth sports, and that is turf. Turf at these complexes I have traveled, most of these complexes I have traveled to all have turf. I've gone from Vieira Beach to Kansas City, Kansas with youth baseball, and oh my gosh, I can't read, sorry. This is horrible.
You need my glasses, because I can't see.
I might need them, yeah, actually. Oh, look at there, we got the same eyes. A good conversation starter when you go to these events is people always ask where you're from, and probably say Pensacola, Florida. And they always ask, man, that's such a nice area. Do y'all have a complex like this down there? And sadly, I'm like, no, we don't. To talk about what Coach Lee just talked about with the Panama City location, just this past weekend, while having that lacrosse going on at the same park, USSSA Baseball hosted 150 teams at that same location. That is an organization that I work closely with here at NEP. Our biggest tournament to date has been 55 teams. So it's a drastic difference. This is an organization that's based out of Clearwater, Florida. They travel from here to Katy, Texas. Love the area, want to be here, want to help us grow, and I think they even wrote a letter in support of it. Michael touched about the safety of the product. As a parent, I want my kids to feel safe playing. I want to feel like my kid's safe playing. It enhances that experience. Why turf? I'll go back to what was just brought up earlier, UWF football field. It's not grass, it's turf. There's a reason for that. Teams from our area leave Pensacola to go and play at these places, specifically to play on turf. So teams from other areas that don't have turf also look at that as well. Not only would we be keeping local teams local, spending money at our local restaurants, but we would be bringing in teams to stay at our hotels, visit our beaches, take in what Pensacola has to offer, eat at our restaurants, and support our retail stores. Michael said we already have this complex. All we're doing is enhancing it. There's no reason to go buy more land. When we have it, it's there. The youth rec program is thriving. It can only get better and will only get better with the upgrades to our facilities. It's a facility that has been there for, I think, 30, 35 years now, and I'm not sure there has been much updating since. If you build it, they will come, and that place to do it is at John R. Jones Jr. Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Buck. He did steal my line, but I had stolen the line from a great baseball movie as well, Build It, They Will Come. So that was kind of the go-in line today. But again, as Ray Palmer and the folks have put on there, Mr. Nelson Mandela, sports has the power to change the world. We truly believe that. It's been referenced just in closing before answer questions. When you get a rain delay, as we all in Florida know, afternoon thunderstorms in the summertime are about 2 or 3 p.m., it seems, every afternoon on 9 Mile Road. Wouldn't you say, Adam? And so when you get a heavy thunderstorm, 30, 45 minutes, when you've got clay, Georgia Southern clay on your infields, and I know you know baseball as well, it can end your day and send people to the house, okay? But if you've got turf, it sit around. As long as it's not lightning, you're playing in 15 or 20 minutes later. That's just how it is. So in the tournament world, you want to know you have the opportunity to get your games in. And that is a huge, huge factor when it comes to softball, baseball, and maybe not as much lacrosse because you can play on wet fields, but you can't, baseball, softball doesn't play in mud. So again, those afternoon Florida thunderstorms, it's a big deal to have turf in that regard. Again, Laura McCullers is here from Pensacola Sports to answer any of the return on investment, sports economic impact type questions. And Mr. Stephen Hall, if there's any questions about how to possibly finance this or so forth. But what I'd like to respectfully request in closing before getting with them is support of this request that I've made on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department to the Board of County Commissioners respectfully. And again, I've got our team here with Adam Reed, Mark Humphreys, and Ms. McCullers and Stephen Hall to answer any questions if needed.
Great. Thank you, Michael. So this is a $25 million request. You saw the budget. And with that, I'll open it up for discussion.
I have.
Start with Councilman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions. So the turf, I saw all the letters, and I appreciate seeing the support. The synthetic turf, how long does that last?
My question.
It depends on the use, but you're looking at about 12 to 15 years respectively, and that depends on the use, but you don't have to replace the whole thing.
Okay.
You're replacing just the top level. You're not going in underneath per se, because obviously you have a base of hard surface, sand, rubber. It would be basically just the, I'll call it the rug portion of
What
this.
percentage of the cost would that be, just the top part? Do you have any idea?
Adam and I talked about it. It's, what was it? About 40%. Let's say if it was $1 million a field, but it's not because T-ball fields aren't as expensive as the bigger fields. About 40% of the first.
Okay.
But I will say that that would be part of my Parks and Recreation planning over a 10 to 15-year period down the road. But you wouldn't have to do anything to it other than the vacuuming it and so forth for the 10 to 12, 15 years. And again, you would have to monitor it. Some of it would be based on how much you play on it, which we'd be playing a lot on it.
Yeah.
And then obviously the sun wear and tear and so forth.
Okay.
But that would be something that I would build into my budget over that time frame.
Okay. And I do like the fact that we wouldn't have to fertilize it and mow it and all that stuff. That's definitely positive.
Absolutely. Irrigation costs go away.
Yep.
Wear and tear on that type maintenance costs absolutely goes away.
Okay. And then, like, tournament-wise, what are you all currently doing, and what kind of projection do you have as far as increase in that? I don't know if I saw that exactly.
There were some numbers provided on how many we could accommodate based on. I want to say most of the tournaments that are being done now, if they have 40 to 50 tournaments, 40 or 50 teams per tournament, could certainly be increased up to the 70 or 80 type teams. And then Laura has the roster, the average number per roster on a baseball team. Same type stuff we did with lacrosse to compare about average how many are on each tournament roster. And then again, we identified how many dates would be available. And this isn't gospel. It was just based on open weekends throughout the year and then based on the summertime usage where recreation sports is over in the May time frame and it's wide open through the summer to have those 4 and 5 day weeks, 4 or 5 day tournaments.
Okay. But as far as what I'm just trying to get at is by making this investment, what percentage increase could we possibly see in the number of tournaments, number of teams? Do we have any idea on that?
I'm gonna turn that to maybe Mr. Buck or Ms. McCullers to answer that.
So currently, my main partner at the park is USSSA Sports, and I think we've had 6 tournaments scheduled with them this year, completing 3 already, with 3 more to come, and then a following World Series, which is a week-long event. It started as a 3-day event and has grown to a 5-day event now. Mm-hmm. And that's just with one organization. So you're looking at, we got letters of support from 2D, which is another baseball, softball organization. NCS is another group that I partner with softball. So 2D and USSSA are just 2 groups, and you probably could look at 15 to 20 tournaments a year just from those groups. The numbers I gave you were the 5 or 6. That's just the spring. They ran 5 last fall.
Right.
So you could go from that number to almost every other weekend with a major size tournament here with 80-plus teams in it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's just a really big number, 25 million. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the investment from TDT funds. It's interesting to me to have the county, have staff from the county asking us. It's interesting. So I yield to other questions. Thank you.
Shirley?
This is for Stefan. How would we pay for it with this ask?
Thank you.
Good afternoon again, council members. So this would be something that obviously, I've provided status of reserves for everybody. We don't have 25 million in reserves. However, this would be something that we would consider as part of the bonding, which we had discussed previously, another sports facility. This is not technically a building of a facility, but ultimately an eligible capital investment, if you will, with tourist development tax dollars that has been validated. We've even had conversations with our bond counsel regarding this type of project. But the way we pay for it is through a bonding mechanism.
So would that be bonding the 5th cent? Because I think we only have $104 million that we can bond out of the 5th cent, and the Bay Center is still out there as well.
So the pennies that would be used for the bonding would be the first 2 pennies as it related to the Bay Center, and the 5th penny, which would be the Bay Center. If ultimately whatever the board ultimately approves, either it's all Bay Center or it's Bay Center and the sports project. But those 3 pennies are the ones that would be used for the financing of the projects.
Okay, and that's that $104 million chunk. Okay.
comments?
Yeah, yes.
Councilwoman? Okay.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay,
So I have on my screen here, it
What-
shows
how
who has
do I do
pressed the
your
button,
screen?
but you don't have your name on your screen.
No, I do not.
So I don't
All
know
I
whose-
can do is
whose
turn this
they're
light on.
Councilwoman, you have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, first off, I think we all understand how outrageous sports tourism is and the amount of money that parents will pay to travel, to do travel sports. That's not really a question. I'm really more interested in your safety statements. So I appreciate not doing fertilizer. I think that's a safety issue for kids. But these artificial turfs are PFAS and PAHs and phthalates, and they're being banned in communities all around the country because of their impact on people and their degradation into the soil, et cetera. I don't actually know how to come to terms with that one, how to balance that one out. I don't know that I would feel comfortable. I mean, I try to keep, we've got a whole thing going on at the airport because of PFAS. Like, we don't want exposure to this stuff, yet we know this is what it's built with, and we know that the Florida sun is going to degrade that even quicker, and so that's going to be more airborne, more exposure for the kids, et cetera. And then the heat islands that are formed on this kind of plastic that makes it an extreme heat also, which is also an issue in Florida. So I'm hung up on you guys claiming it more safe when I would be very hesitant for my kids to be on the surface.
So I can't get, frankly, because I'm not the expert in the chemical part of it, but what I will say, much of the turf product that they're manufacturing now, they're making where it's cooler because of the Florida sun, Texas sun. They had this problem out in the state of Texas with high school football where they put these turf fields in and it became, you couldn't practice on them in August, in September. So a lot of the turf product now is how they get to that point. Again, I'm not the expert in how that gets to that point, but they're making them where they're more heat tolerable and there's a cooling mechanism in that. I don't know if it was the public sports complex, but one of the more recent turf projects in this region went with that product, and it's much more. Frankly, I'm not the expert on the chemical part of how that works, but that's something that if we got to that point, we would certainly take that up upon the design to make sure it was in a safe manner. So I certainly would not want to put any kids or adults at risk at being on this. But we would do much more as far as making sure that was safe. What I was talking about is the safety component, is the turned ankles that you get from little divots and so forth, the bad hops you get from baseball that are part of the game, but at the same time, when you're playing 6 games on a baseball diamond in one day, that's literally impossible to defend without having a smooth surface. That was the safety component, and I respect your opinion of the chemicals, or I shouldn't say chemicals, but the environment part of that. I respect it totally. That's something we'd have to dig deeper into, but I was referring more to the safety, and frankly, the heat part is something we did take into account, that a lot of the current new product is very heat tolerant because of the Southeast. When they're putting all these complexes in, they're taking that into account.
Okay, I think that right now that's what's hanging me up is because, aside from the money, money is kind of big, but I am concerned about, I think the experts out there, the research out there says that we have not seen what the long-term effects on kids playing on this over years is, and I think that we have to be mindful and have a good answer to that personally. That's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brad, did you have comments?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to go through the numbers and maybe give me some clarity with this. I see that for baseball, for example, a range of 40 teams play off on a 2-day tournament and 80 teams. What is the sweet spot there? We've had 55, and I know 80 is the max, but sometimes, and maybe this is not the case, but sometimes, yes, we could get 80 teams, but really we don't have the staff or whatever to support that. So where do we think we would land comfortably?
Again, in my honest opinion, we could accommodate 60 to 80 teams at any weekend very comfortably, because in talking about staffing these type of events, you actually need less staffing when it comes to the turf, because let's say the field's clay right now with Mr. Buck's events and that we support these events. We're providing manpower out there to drag the fields, chalk the fields between the games. That type of level of service goes away, per se, if that makes sense. There's no in-between field maintenance to transition. So 80 teams, we're very comfortable with running those that type of a tournament, maxed capacity, because the manpower you have to supply is not necessarily more. Actually, with this type product, it becomes less.
Is there any?
And as far as I didn't mean to run up, but as far as we ran these type numbers because we're comfortable that the facility would have that many people in a safe, compatible manner as well.
Is there any data on a facility with the same number of fields and what they average?
I do not have that data, but that is something that we can gather. We do know that some of our neighbors, Daphne, for example, in Panama City, they do hold tournaments with 80 to 120 teams in a weekend, and we can get that kind of data fairly easily.
Jason?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a hotelier. I believe in youth sports. I believe that they're, I don't believe, I know for a fact that they are a major demand generator, particularly along communities of the Gulf Coast. If you can imagine, there's a youth sports director in Indianapolis, Indiana, in the middle of January that wants to book a traveling tournament, where are they going to look? That's a rhetorical question. They're probably not going to look in their own backyard because their backyard is frozen. So they're going to look at our competition. And right now our competition is Bay County, Daphne, Orange Beach and Gulf Shores, even over to Dothan. My own son is in a traveling lacrosse team. In fact, Coach Eric Hollis is one of his coaches. We were in another youth sports facility this weekend that I would rate as the least desirable of all those youth sports facilities that we travel to. And the unfortunate fact of the matter is Escambia County is number 2, and number 2 only because we have great access in Jones Park. We have 3 primary entrances, tons of parking, great lighting, ample fields, 18 diamonds and 2 convertible fields that I believe each of those convertible fields will make 4 fields. So a sum total of 7 playable fields for lacrosse, soccer, any field sports. I would suggest that the sports that we realize today isn't the potential. What we need to ascertain are those tournaments that we don't see that are going to our competition, and how can we reel those back in? Glad that you pointed out Daphne and Bay County as examples of a key data point. I would add Baldwin County, Alabama. My own experience operating hotels in Baldwin County was that when USSSA showed up for their first summer tournament in the early 2000s, in the middle of the summer, I might add, hoteliers were initially very off-put by the fact that we would host youth sports events in the middle of the summer. What we found is that youth sports created market compression that allowed us to yield the remaining hotel inventory higher. So that is to say, as an example, we were successful at a $200 ADR before USSSA showed up, but because USSSA consumed so much of the market and created market compression on that static supply of hotel rooms, the remaining hotel rooms were sold at a higher rate. That induced a higher market value and a higher return on bed tax. I echo Mr. Rhodes in that the transit time from Jones to anywhere in Escambia County is pretty short. You can jump right on 110, shoot down Scenic, you can be downtown or on Pensacola Beach, and they can all come back up to 9 Mile Road where there's excellent infrastructure. And to echo what Mr. Rhodes said, there are 23 hotels just within that close proximity. I believe that that we have an opportunity to turn Jones Park into an example for all youth sports to aspire to, and for us to have a waiting list at some point of youth sports that want to come to the Escambia County to play a tournament here. I will say that my son and his teammates always cherish the opportunity to go play at the turf field in Gulf Breeze. So if you want to see an example of what an awesome turf field is, just drive across the bridge, go to Shoreline Park, and there's one right there. I believe this is an outstanding improvement to a key demand generator for Escambia County tourism that will realize a significant payback. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love the project as well. I just had a few questions on the sizes of it. You said that Bay County and Daphne were already hosting tournaments with 80 teams, and I noticed that we're looking at putting in almost double the number of fields that they have. Is it maybe overkill, or can we cut back on the number of fields, or what is your recommendation?
If you ask one more time, are you asking would we cut back on the number? I would suggest the number of 80 we could increase. We just provided that level of 80 teams. We could realize a higher number of that for sure. The reason I think you have to do them all, because let's just say there's a 70-team tournament. There may be different age groups that you're playing on said weekend where you need, let's say 11 and 12-year-old fields are totally full, but the T-ball fields or the 14 and 15-year-old age group distance is not full. So I would definitely recommend doing all of the fields because you don't know what age groups that you will play. I will say, this is a little bit of a sidebar, part of the project would be, let's say if we did all the fields, you would have temporary fencing ordered. So you would have a large field to play 14-year-olds on, and this is kind of getting in the baseball aspect, but you would have temporary fencing up or available to create shorter field distances as well, so that you could have as many as 12-year-old fields if you need, with creating shorter distances with turf. You can't do that on natural grass and clay because your distinct clay lines and grass lines are already identified. The other thing that was noted about lacrosse, yes, you could have 6 to 7 full-size lacrosse fields, but younger age groups of lacrosse play on smaller distances. Our outfields of the softball fields are will be sized to the level you could put lacrosse fields on those outfields as well. So you could have up to 10 or 12 lacrosse fields for a bigger lacrosse tournament if need be, and we certainly feel we would be able to market to that as well. So yes, you will have I'll call them the football fields and multi-use fields, but when we were putting the project together and the study together, the outfields of the softball fields are compatible to put lacrosse fields on as well. Again, if they're turf, not if they have clay and then a grass mesh. So sorry that was a long-winded answer, but I think doing all of them allow you to market to all the age groups.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Reeves?
Let me ask, is this $25 million, does that do the whole job?
I'm very comfortable that does the whole drop. Turf fields, all the fields, I feel that covers, and it also covers a lot of the landscape aesthetics that would be remodeled in this project as well.
And the benefit of, if you would stay up there, I have a couple more questions, please.
Yes, sir.
The benefit of not having to cut the grass and water and so forth, do you have any kind of idea about what kind of saving that is per year?
Absolutely. We ran the numbers on that earlier today, and over time, we're spending approximately $150,000 to $200,000 a year when it comes to irrigation, mowing. Mowing is the biggest number, frankly. Irrigation repairs. I'll call it dirt and sand for clay ball fields and fertilizer type cost, but the biggest cost would be mowing and irrigation.
And you would be planning to replace these fields as part of your operation into the future?
Correct, sir. I have an annual budget for that type.
But from the operation that we've had so far, we haven't had any money set aside for this kind of capital investment?
No, sir. But moving forward, if this were to come to fruition, I would be going to the county commission asking for additional to down the road in 10 to 12 years, if what I was telling Mr. Bear is
You're
way down the
asking
road.
us to fund the full 25 million?
That would be our request to the TDC
And-
via BCC.
And
for a one-time, yes, sir.
so did you ask the county commission for anything?
Not at this point.
You didn't ask them for the money and they said, come to us? How about the Sports Association? Do they have any funding in this?
In the presentation, in the marketing, they have committed to $10,000 for marketing for year one to help promote, should this come to fruition, to help promote in the marketing world for tournament organizers to help attract, and again, there's a page on that Ray had provided along with Laura.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask the master of the exchequer if, I don't want you to have a conflict now on this answer, but our normal operations, if we take 25 million here and 2 million there, and 9.5 million there, how will that affect our normal operations as far as promotion and the other things we do?
Council member, so the way that I had thought through the financing mechanism or the bonding mechanism and the use of the pennies, it was to keep Visit Pensacola whole, Pensacola Sports whole, our unified budget whole, as well as the allocations that we give to each of our partner agencies. Now, certainly if we keep having more and more folks come and ask, yeah, that may be an issue. But ultimately, Visit Pensacola and our unified budget folks, that is the main driver of the TDT revenue that we do receive through those marketing and advertising efforts. That would remain the same. They would basically be more or less static or level as far as their funding.
Let me ask you this. To me, 25 million now, if we said, oh, let's go with a $12.5 million plan, well, the other 12.5 would be 18 by the time you got to that point. But it seems to me the simplest thing is this board could commit to $5 million a year, and you could, or the county commission could, go down to the Friendly Bank and borrow $25 million and pay it back $5 million a year, and it wouldn't have so much effect on us. And I appreciate what you said, but it's really not fair to all those other people out here in the world that are waiting to come ask us for money. In other words, we've got enough right now, but if other people ask, we're not going to be able to be as generous with them. So my question to you, would it make logical sense, understanding you represent a commission and what have you, but I mean, why wouldn't we just borrow that money? And it would seem, I mean, even if we said we'll give you the $5 million a year plus interest on 25 million, wouldn't that make more sense than just hitting us up for 25 million all at once?
Well, I think that's certainly a good idea. It's something to share with the board. See if the board thinks that that's a good idea. I mean, that's certainly something.
You mean this board or the other board?
My bosses. So, I mean, if that's something that council would prefer, or maybe provide as an option, certainly something to talk about.
Thank you.
I appreciate that conversation. Thank you.
Councilman?
Are we to the comment? Can we make comments now? I think everybody's asked their questions.
Everybody else.
And I was waiting to make comments similar to my fellow council member over here, council and council. I'm concerned about the synthetic turf as well. You know, I know that some of the stuff I've seen as far as the little pieces coming loose and ending up everywhere in people's uniforms, spraying their bodies. As the head of a environmental nonprofit, I feel like it's kind of incumbent upon me to have concerns about that. I'm also concerned, you know, you want to have water pooling there, but water's got to go somewhere. So we're talking about putting in relatively impervious surface, 20 fields worth, and that water's going to have to go somewhere. And so I'm concerned about that as well. The 25 million, you know, when I was on city council previously, I remember when we did the sales tax reauthorization, then we borrowed so that we could spend it all as fast as we could, you know, spend it. And then we ended up paying debt service, a lot of debt service near the end because we spent so much in the beginning. We had very little left at the end of that cycle. There's a push right now in the legislature to have us do that reauthorization every 8 years. And I don't really have a problem with that, going back to the people and asking them if it's okay. And they need to be the ones that judge how we spend the money. Not us, really. And so I think to take on this amount, to bond it out, you know, I think there's a lot of things we could do with money that we, you know, bond out that this may not be the best one. I mean, we're talking about really what I've heard is 3 sports, baseball, softball, and lacrosse. That's all I've heard to this point. I'm sure there's other things that could take place on those fields, but it's a huge investment. And just because we can bond it out doesn't mean it's like free money. I mean, we still have to pay the debt on that. And so I'm just not, I realize we're just an advisory board. Ashley and her fellow commissioners can do whatever they want. This is a request from the county, so I feel like the commissioners can make the decision as to how they want to do it. But I did hear it could be lumped in with the Bay Center, and I think there definitely needs to be improvements at the Bay Center and probably look at that whole area down there. And I think to mix this in with that, I think doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So right now, I'm not really supportive of this. We don't have the money. We'd have to bond it. So it's just not something that I feel like is a top priority. We've got other things going on. But, you know, ultimately, we're just an advisory board. So that's the way I feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say this, that I wasn't talking about any bonding whatsoever. I'm just talking about going down to the bank, borrow the money, and pay it back. When you got the full faith and credit of this board, you know you can count on us to repay.
You're going to sign on that?
With the county commission's help.
Commissioner, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I would just like to see maybe like a scaled back plan that we would be able to work into the bonding with the Bay Center. I think $25 million with what we also want to put in the Bay Center, because we have to make the two of those work together, because there is only so much money there. And I think everybody agrees the Bay Center was a huge priority. I think this is great. I think it will add a lot of hotel rooms. So just knowing what our other options would be, especially when it's twice the size of neighboring communities and places that we're competing against.
Councilwoman?
And I do think we need to know more about the environmental impact, particularly on the children. You know, it's one thing when someone my age exposes themselves to something regularly, but when you're talking about that from small up, and you have accumulation of these kinds of chemicals that we know are in there, not the ones we don't know, but the PFAS, the PAHs. I mean, we need to have some data on that to be sure. And it really doesn't matter that other places do it. It's like, just because the Joneses do doesn't mean I want to expose, even if my kid's playing somewhere else. But I still want to know what we're doing before we make that the regular exposure for our children. I mean, I need that kind of information, I have to admit.
Thank you.
Just on the proposal, the presentation, just one clerical correction under the tournament potential for the Play Easy baseball and softball events, the TDT collections are actually, the accommodations revenue is actually listed as the TDT collection. So if one edit to that would be to discount that to 5% of what the TDT, the accommodations revenue is. Yeah, thanks for pulling that up. Yeah, there we go. So 15,000 by 157.8 average daily rate is $2.3 million, and we tax at a 5% rate, so it's $119,000. Still not a small number. What I might recommend is that Mr. Rhodes, you work with Pensacola Sports Association to create a market study to identify the annual economic impact of youth sport or any tournament events, tourism-based tournament events, tourism being defined as folks that come into town for one or more nights, on an annual basis. And then let's analyze that toward the ask to determine the value. I still truly believe in this request. Youth sports are a major demand generator for the hotels that I operate. And it's in all counties, I should say, and 6 in Florida, specifically, and including Baldwin County. Escambia County would do well to improve its presentation to the youth sports travelers. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a couple comments. First, I don't know that I would have used the saying, the baseball saying, "Build it and they will come," although I will address that. I normally used to say when my son played baseball, there's no crying in baseball.
There you go.
I think that's my favorite baseball quote.
Fair enough.
But I do believe, with a community, you have to have the assets to draw the tourists here. There's the advertising, like we talked about earlier. There's different avenues. And building a community that is attractive to those and having the assets for those folks, the travelers, to utilize is important. I think this is clearly an authorized use of the tax.
Absolutely.
My son played baseball. Thank God he quit and started playing lacrosse because he enjoys it much more. He played at Bill Bond over off of Summit. We had, Clay Fields there. They always got beat by NEP. I can't imagine how much better NEP is going to be when they have these turf fields. But Coach Hollis was my son's lacrosse coach. He's playing for Catholic High School. They have the district championships tomorrow night.
That's right.
For boys. But I think this is a great project for our community. I think we have for years in the tourism industry at the TDC have talked about sports tourism. We've had Pensacola Sports do multiple sports tourism economic impact studies. They all come back and show that you make the investment into sports tourism, you will get the return. The data that is in this report shows that there will be a return. And so when we talk about making that investment up front, obviously this is a $25 million request. It is a large request, but it shows a return. And although if it's bonded and based on today's collection, it may freeze other outside agency appropriation, but also maybe block out the opportunity for others to come and request money. If it's generating a return, it's not going to. We're going to be paying off the bond, and we're going to be growing every penny that we're collecting because we're increasing tourism. And so I don't believe that'll happen. I believe we need to make these investments in these types of projects. The Bay Center is also an important project. That's not going to freeze out tourism. That's going to grow tourism. And so we're going to continue to be able to generate additional revenue, additional tourist development tax, to continue to reinvest into our community, into these assets and more, and also the marketing of these assets. And so and I don't know anything about the environmental issues related to these products. I'm ignorant of those points. I do have a house at Pensacola Beach, and it has a side yard, and rather than putting in grass, I put in the artificial turf, and I specifically put in the type of turf that does not get hot in the summer, because I want to use my beach house in the summer, and I want to be able to stand in the yard. And it does work. I don't know about the health issues related to it. I mean, I have a little bit of a cough that's constant, but I don't think that has anything to do with it. But anyway, all jokes aside, I think this is a great project. I'm in support of it. I think we do it today. We do it all today. We get that return much faster. If we do it partially today and then partially, 3-5 years from now, it's going to cost us twice as much to do the rest of it. And it's going to be that much longer till we get the return on that investment. And so today, I'm in support of this. So I don't know if anybody else has any other comments or questions, but we've had pretty good long debate. So if there is interest in a motion at this time, we would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we allocate to Escambia County $25 million for the improvement to the Jones Youth Sports Facility.
Thank you. So we have a motion from Mr. Nichols.
I second that.
Thank you. And we have a second from Ms. Cronley. Is there any further debate or discussion? Mr. Reeves.
Why do we want to spend $25 million just all at one time when we could do it $5 million a year and still have other money to spend on other things? I mean, I'm not against the $25 million. I just don't understand why we would want to spend it out of this year's budget and leave ourselves.
Oh, I don't think we're taking out of the operating budget for the year. I think we're talking about bonding to get going to the bank through a bond.
You think we're talking about what?
I don't believe we're talking about taking $25 million out of our annual operating budget and wipe out all those
But
appropriations.
You said something else.
The county has been talking about issuing a bond to pay for it.
Yeah, so we have $104 million that we can bond from the first, third, and fifth. Is that right? Tell us where the money's coming from, Stefan.
First 2 pennies and the 5th cent. So and maybe this will help council. So I think if there's support for the project, we will work through whatever the financing is. Ultimately, the Board of County Commissioners must approve any type of financial instrument.
Well, they have to approve this also.
Correct. So that may help.
I am under the impression there is a lot of momentum behind this from the board. Obviously, I'm only one of 5, but I think a lot of people are very excited about this. It's just a question of how do we balance the spending with the base center spending.
Correct.
So just knowing that all of that's going to have to come from the same pot. So one of those projects is going to have to be scaled back to some degree.
And there may be some other financial options that we have, and we just need to work through all that.
Right.
So are we saying that we're going to have how this plays into the financing? Is that going to come back to us, or are we going
to? I think if it affects our annual operating budget, the appropriations to the outside agencies, et cetera, I think that it would need to come back to speak to our group, because we do the annual budgeting.
I'm really not talking about our operations this year. I'm talking about, to take this big a hit on our kitty, if for no other reason, just to like to have the flexibility that we have enough money in the kitty for everybody who wants to get in the kitty, So let me ask you, are you telling us, what are you telling us about the financing?
So basically, where we are with this, we know we've got two large TDT project requests, if you will. So roughly somewhere around that $100 million is is what we can bond. And it may be that we would need to also use some additional, another funding source, if you will, to make everything happen, depending on whatever the TDC recommends and whatever my board ultimately approves. As far as scale, which things ultimately are decided to be the most important between all of the projects that we have. But again, as far as operations, if you will, the debt service payment would come out of the annual TDT budget, but it would be designed in such a way, because right now none of the 5th cent is being spent toward operations or the annual TDT budget. So 100% of that would be used for debt service. The pennies, I believe, last year generated roughly $4.4 million per penny. We're running right about that at this time.
We're in favor of the 25 million, but take it out of the 5th cent, we'd be slick.
So the first 2 pennies can certainly be used. I also believe the 4th cent could be used if we needed to, but right now we're only talking the first 2 pennies and the 5th cent. So it would be some portion of the first 2 cents ultimately used toward the bonding. The first 2 pennies were approved by voter referendum of the Escambia County public voted for that, and the first 2 pennies were completely pledged for the Bay Center at that time.
I won't prolong it any longer. I'm in favor of going forward whatever way we can.
Okay.
So I'll call for a vote.
Okay, well, I was going to ask if there's any other comments.
Yes, I won't have a chance.
Yes.
If you have to scale back, if you'd consider while you're researching the chemicals, not doing at least the T-ball fields so that they're not accumulating from so young, maybe. I mean, those guys probably don't have to play in the rain, right? Just a thought.
With us, I have Tim Day with our environmental director with me, behind me. But again, we would definitely take that into account, absolutely.
Hey,
Welcome, Tim.
Chairman. So just what I'd like to point out, and it's something to be done through the specs. There are turf products that are certified PFAS-free. EPA just recently lowered their standards, or increased their standards, lowered what it takes for a bad exposure. So I think that's a lot of this, we can take care of it through procurement and make sure we have a safe product out there.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's not surprising the EPA would lower its standards given the current administration. They probably don't care about PFAS at all, but it's a big situation we're dealing with in the state of Florida. Municipalities may get sued over PFAS, probably not in the current administration, but sometime in the future it could happen. I'm not going to support this, not because I don't support youth sports, hope you understand that. I think that without having a clear picture of where we're going with the Bay Center right now, that's just more critical to, I think, the city at this point. Not that city residents won't enjoy what's happening up there at this particular facility, but it is more focused on the county at large. And I just want to make sure there's plenty of funding there to do whatever we're going to do with the Bay Center, hopefully encompassing the grassy field that we used to call a tech park, which has never been a tech park, the hotel down there, and I just think it's kind of premature to go ahead and do this for $25 million for these sports, so I won't be supporting it today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. There's a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I will call for the vote. If you would please call the roll.
James Reeves.
You want to start at the other end tonight?
Jason Nicholson.
Yes.
Brad Molinex.
No.
Jennifer Bayer. Charles Bayer.
No.
David Bayer.
Yes.
Shirley Cronley.
Yes.
Ashley Hoffberger.
Yes.
And James Reeves.
I think the motion carried. What was the final vote? Is it 5-3? 5-3. 5-3. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And team. It's good to see you, Coach. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is beach renourishment. Oh, I thought the muscle was coming up to the microphone, but she just walked by. Mike Burns is here. Welcome. And we have a few speakers. Thank you. And if you don't mind, I'm going to
Thank you, David. Great to see you this afternoon.
It's nice to see you too. I'm going to actually have to pass the gavel for a moment because I need to take a bathroom break.
I can understand.
Thank you.
I can understand. Once again, welcome. Thank you for having us, the beach, Pensacola Beach. I'm Mike Burns. I'm the Executive Director of the Santa Rosa Island Authority. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to many of you tonight. I've chatted Jennifer on the phone, Jason and I in the past, and of course, Ashley and Jim about this particular project, as well as David. The one thing that we need to realize and come to understand is that Pensacola Beach is more than a mere premier destination. It is the economic engine of Escambia County. Let there be no doubt, as Denzel Washington said in the movie Remember the Titans, Pensacola Beach is the economic engine for Escambia County. Thanks again for having us here today. Let you know a little bit about our project and what's going on. Beach renourishment is going to begin on November 1st, 2025. The window for beach renourishment is between November 1st through Memorial Day of 2026. During that time period, we hope to put 1.8 million cubic yards of sand on Pensacola Beach to protect the beach, to protect the infrastructure, to protect the homes, to protect the core, and protect the tourism value for Pensacola Beach. We'll do our bid openings later this week from our different contractors. We have multiple contractors that are going to be bidding on this process, and so later this week we'll know where we stand. The two economic values on Pensacola Beach and beach renourishment, we have to know that it attracts tourists and it protects the residents. That's what beach renourishment does. It attracts tourists and it protects the residents. But even more, it protects the infrastructure on Pensacola Beach. The sand is infrastructure and it protects the infrastructure. Florida Power and Light, just in the last year or so, has put $28 million invested into Pensacola Beach, Santa Rosa Island Authority, to protect their infrastructure in hardening the lines on Pensacola Beach. I got to thank J.T. Young and David Peden, who serves on our board, for making sure that Florida Power and Light has invested this money to protect the infrastructure on Pensacola Beach. Also here today, Jeremy Johnson, who's our chairman of the board for the Santa Rosa Island Authority. He is fully supportive of the beach renourishment project on the beach, along with other people we have here. We have members of the Pensacola Beach Chamber of Commerce. They've stepped away from whatever they had to do today to come down and speak to you if necessary to let you know how much they support beach renourishment on Pensacola Beach. And I don't really have to tell you guys this, because Jason, I know you understand this, that U.S. tourism generates more money, more economic output than all of the commercial and business investments when it comes to major manufacturing countries in the United States. That's more than Tesla. That's more than McDonnell Douglas. That's more than Boeing. That's more than Caterpillar. You add it all together. Tourism is what we do right in the United States. And it's definitely what we do right on Pensacola Beach. And Jason knows this because there are over 8,000 jobs and people that are employed on Pensacola Beach. Innisfree is the largest employer on Pensacola Beach. And when you look at that, over $287 million, $287 million is produced in revenue and salaries on people who work on Pensacola Beach. Of that, $500 million goes to the gross regional product on Pensacola Beach. And then when you think about how much money is collected in taxes from Pensacola Beach, over $131 million are collected in federal, state, and local taxes from the revenue that comes off of Pensacola Beach. Now, you've all got a copy of our presentation because I know Danielle has sent it to every one of you. One of the things that you really get when you get beach renourishment on Pensacola Beach and everywhere else is if you don't do beach renourishment, your beaches are going to become narrower and your tourism is going to suffer. It's going to go down. You guys know this as a TDC board. Walton County is experiencing this right now. Their TDC collections are down 12%. 12% because they have not done beach renourishment in the last couple of years. And I got that information from one of my buddies who serves on the board at TDC in Walton County. They have to go through a whole other process to get their beach renourished compared to us because they have private beach, which we don't have. We have public beach, which is 8.1 miles of beach on Pensacola Beach that we hope to renourish starting November 1st. The mayor of Miami Beach, when beach renourishment first came out back in the late 70s, said that his beach was just nothing but a bunch of breakwater beaches with debt-ridden hotels because they didn't renourish the beach. Pensacola Beach and the Santa Rosa Island Authority hope to continue to make Pensacola Beach the economic engine for Escambia County. If you could see how much money is invested in Pensacola Beach and what will be invested when we do the beach renourishment, just like the mayor of Miami, and this was quoted in Time magazine, the money spent on beach renourishment in 1 year came back 5 times in revenue. 5 times in revenue. So when beaches are large, what happens? More tourists come to enjoy the beaches. And what happens? It protects the infrastructure on the beach. You guys, many of you were here back in Hurricane Opal that happened in the late 90s, early 2000. Jennifer, I know you were. And Panama City Beach lost 471 structures. 471 structures because they had not done beach renourishment. They started implementing beach renourishment, and in a recent hurricane, Hurricane Michael, a Category 5 hurricane that hit Panama City Beach, they didn't lose any structures. No damage to Panama City Beach. Now, the other thing that happened is Panama City was back and open for doing business within months after Hurricane Michael hit that beach. They were ranked the #1 beach destination in the United States, along with Huntington Beach, after Hurricane Michael, because they did beach renourishment, and they kept their beach thriving. Like I said earlier, 12% in TDC dollars shortfall in Walton County because they did not do beach renourishment. You've got the calculations. I think it's on page 13. It shows you what we're asking for. We put together, along with the county, $13.4 million. The Santa Rosa Island Authority has come forward with $10.1 million. So we got skin in the game. By no means. We have skin in the game. And in the process, the last time that the Island Authority came to the TDC and came to the county, we paid back $8.5 million and have saved $10.1 million. If we had that money, we probably wouldn't even be coming to you right now to ask for money. But we have $13.4 million plus $13.4 million from the state of Florida on a grant. That comes up to $26.8 million. And David and I have chatted many times, and he knows that the original numbers were much lower because the cost of sand was much lower. At $17 a cubic yard, the cost of the sand would have brought the cost of beach renourishment to $30.4 million. We'd be short about $3 million. But the cost of sand has gone up. Sand is now $20 a cubic yard at 1.8, and that's where you get the $36 million. That's the difference in the number. That's where the shortfall comes in. And that's why we're here today to ask you for the $9.2 million, which will, every penny of it will be spent for sand that goes along the Gulf front to protect the tourism, to protect the residents, and to protect the infrastructure on Pensacola Beach. It's the most worthwhile investment you can make, and you can guarantee that if you put sand on that beach, it's going to put dollars in your pocket for the TDC. I appreciate and welcome any questions that you may have. If I can't answer them, I'll get you the answer to those questions. But I appreciate your time and diligence in listening today. I know it's late in the afternoon. It's nice to be the leadoff hitter. You know, you don't get to see all the pitches, but you know what? I don't mind being 8 and 9 in the lineup either, just as long as I get a chance to swing the bat. So thank you again for letting me come and present in front of you today.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. I'll be available for any questions if anybody has any.
We do have some public speakers on this, and so don't go far. But Patrick Garrett is our first speaker. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, good evening, Council. I'm Patrick Garrett. I'm here speaking on behalf of just my experience as a public adjuster and a building consultant. I spent 30 years working hurricanes and damages throughout the Southeast. I started my career here in 1995, 30 years ago this year. I worked for a lot of great businessmen and women in the community, condos, hotels, municipalities throughout my career. Being from Tampa, Florida, I've watched erosion. I've handled claims down there. I've watched the beaches as a young man erode and not have the protection. They put up bulkheads. They try to maintain the beach, and it's just devastating. With insurance, it's difficult. We know what FEMA does, and we've seen the FEMA crisis that's happened in our country, and you've seen these storms that have come through Helene and recently from Milton. Flood only protects the footprint of the building. It doesn't protect your outbuildings, your pools, your parking lots, etc. And the downtime that it creates is astronomical. Sometimes you don't even rebuild, especially with the coastal lines they have improved, and the federal and the state regulations are not going to let people rebuild. And with the 50% rule that's gone into effect in Pinellas County that was arbitrarily sent out to every homeowner, there are people out there that were at retirement age that had $1 million property. It was built in 1975. It was on a canal, and now they're facing to spend $800,000–900,000 to rebuild the property, and they got $200,000 in insurance money. So I've seen the people. The reason why I came here in 1995 was hurricanes. I've got to walk all the beaches throughout the state of Florida, Miami, St. Augustine, all the Gulf of America. And I've walked these beautiful beaches looking at damages. Not sitting on the beach enjoying the sun or your beautiful areas to fish and hang out. Now I do. I'm a property owner here. I'm paying taxes. I relocated here almost 2 years ago. Office in Tampa, office in Pensacola. The loss of business and the purpose of the beach, is to have people come here. And you have beautiful beaches. I grew up going to Clearwater Beach. I watched them constantly re-nourish those beaches there. And it used to take 45 minutes to get from my home to Clearwater Beach. Now it takes an hour and a half. There's that many people that have just relocated or come and visit that area. It's a destination. This is a hidden jewel here, and this is beautiful. I just think the line of defense in a storm is the water coming in that wall of water. The further it has to travel, the less devastation it's going to do. The cross is still there on Fort Pickens. 1995, it didn't move, and it didn't move in Ivan, and it didn't move in Sally either. That just goes to show whatever you've been doing it right. From my eyes, from my perspective, I like the squeaky sand. I didn't know there was squeaky sand growing up as a Central Florida boy. But, if you don't re-nourish it and you don't spend the money now, you can make me a lot of money later when they're also vulnerable, and I come up here and work your claims. But I just want to give you my perspective. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. All right, our next speaker is Ray Kessler. Ray, did I pronounce that? Apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Ray Kessler. I am chairman of the board for the Pensacola Beach Chamber of Commerce, representing 300 business members. And I advocate for using tourist development tax funds to invest in long-term stability, sustainability, and protection for Pensacola Beach. We are facing the very real consequences of beach erosion caused by hurricanes, tropical storms, and rising tides. The process of renourishing our beach is extensive, labor-intensive, costly. It involves offshore dredging and compatible sand, pumping and shaping that sand onto our shoreline, and the vital planting of sea oats to stabilize and protect our dunes from further erosion. But this is not simply an environmental initiative, it's an economic imperative. Pensacola Beach is not just a destination, it's a beacon of our region. It draws millions of visitors each year, underpins our tourism economy, and serves as a stage for the major sporting events, music festivals, family vacations, weddings, and so much more. Our beach supports a thriving network of hotels, restaurants, small businesses, and vacation rentals. It protects homes, businesses, and the Gulf Islands National Seashore and critical wildlife habitats, especially for the species that depend on this environment to reproduce and thrive. Its preservation is as much about ecological balance as it is about economic resilience. And let me be clear, and like Mike said, without Pensacola Beach, there is no tourism engine for Escambia County. It's not just the beachgoers or beachfront residents who benefit. Everyone does, from hotel workers in the city to restaurant owners in neighboring towns. This beach is our common ground, and in every community, common areas are shared and maintained collectively, and Pensacola Beach is no different. It's everyone's beach. It deserves everyone's investment. To date, a disproportionate share of responsibility for beach maintenance has fallen on the shoulders of the beach residents and the Santa Rosa Island Authority. That model is neither fair nor sustainable. Tourism development dollars must play a foundational role in protecting the very thing that makes tourism possible. We believe that reinvesting tourism development tax funds into the nourishment, restoration, and protection of Pensacola Beach is not just the right thing to do, it's the most strategic, cost-effective use of these funds. It aligns directly with the mission of this committee to grow, support, and sustain tourism. If we fail to act now, we risk losing our crown jewel. The cost of inaction will be far greater in lost revenue, declining tourism, eroding infrastructure, and irreversible environmental damage. Let's be forward-thinking. Let's lead with vision. Let's invest in preserving the resource that brings people here, keeps them coming back, and powers our economy year after year. Thank you for your time and your commitment to protecting the future of Pensacola Beach and, by extension, the future of tourism in Escambia County. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Charlene Powell. Charlene, sorry. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of the council, thank you. I'm Charlene Powell. I currently reside at 525 Fort Pickens Road on Pensacola Beach. I'm a two-time resident of the beach. My husband and I resided there from 2010 to 2015, and unfortunately our jobs took us away for a while. But now in retirement, I have returned and built a home. But I come to speak to you today not as a resident, but as a tourist. For as the first time I ever visited Pensacola Beach was in September of 1978. I came as a 22-year-old young lady who wanted to go to the beach. I wanted to lay on the beach and enjoy the sun. It was the first time I'd ever visited Pensacola Beach, although for many years my family went to Myrtle Beach, we went to Jacksonville, we went to San Diego, but for some reason, Pensacola Beach got in my blood. And I come to you today as a tourist, spending all those years, every year returning to Pensacola Beach. And not because there was a family here, or because I had athletics, because I loved that beach. And as a result of that, bringing more people here as tourists and family members and friends. And I probably stayed in every hotel on the beach over that 30 to 40 year period. We do have great restaurants, we have the finest hotels, we have friendly people, but it is that white sand that continues to bring people to our beach every year. And it is very important and vital to the economy of our beach to renourish that and to bring it back to where it should be every year. You know, even during the oil spill of 2010, we had tourists on our beach. And we had tourists who not only were wanting to go in the water when they couldn't, but they helped pick up those oil pods in the evenings. There were a lot of our tourists at the hotels that we were staying with who volunteered to do that because they love this beach. We must preserve, enhance for our future generations our natural resources on our beach. I ask this council to support the renourishment efforts for the tourists who come here every year, for those tourists who enjoy the beach with their children who build sandcastles, for the tourists who get to watch turtles hatch on that beautiful beach, and for those tourists who even learn how to surf in our waters. So thank you for your efforts on behalf of our Tourist Development Council, and thank you for supporting this renourishment project.
Thank you. All right, we have one last speaker, is Rhonda Dorfman. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Rhonda Dorfman, I represent the Pensacola Beach Advocates. We have over 200 leaseholders in our organization. I'm also president of the fun club, the Pensacola Beach Women's Club. We just gave away $30,000 to some organizations, so we're happy we can help. Our organization educates about and supports eco-friendly tourism. Over 60% of the beach is preserved for conservation recreation for public use, and 100% of our beaches are accessible to the public. As you know, the beaches are owned by the county. Pensacola Beach leaseholders do not own any rights from the dunes to the mean high water line. Visitors to Pensacola Beach have increased to the point where 12 days last season, we had more cars and more people on the beach on any given day than on a Blue Angels weekend. Clearly, the #1 reason people visit Pensacola is for our beautiful beaches, to glimpse the sight of the sugary white sand, to enjoy lunch with a beautiful view, to bask in the sun for their hard-earned week's vacation. Pensacola Beach is the reason our beautiful city has become known to so many. It would only be appropriate that tourist development tax funds be used for beach renourishment. In fact, both the UWF football request and the John Jones complex are so desirable for people to come here because we are close to the beach. You want to go to Birmingham, or do you want to come to Pensacola? Without our beaches, Pensacola would just be any other city in the Panhandle, or as someone earlier said, Dothan, Alabama. Please, we really would appreciate funding the Beach Renourishment Project. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's our final public speaker. And so this request for beach renourishment from the Island Authority is for $9.2 million. So I'll open it up for discussion. I see a hand. Councilman Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is probably a question for our financial person. I'm just wondering where this amount would come from. Would this be bonded? I mean, this makes a lot more sense to bond to me. I mean, this is definitely an economic driver, but let him answer that question first.
Council, so the first 3 pennies of TDT can be used for beach renourishment. So ultimately, within existing resources, that's where that would come from. Currently, we do have $2 million set aside for beach renourishment. If council wanted to do any additional dollars out of the first 3 pennies, you would have to waive your reserve policy to do something additionally. Previously, how beach renourishment was done between the resources the Island Authority had, state, the county did a loan from our local option sales tax to the Island Authority where they repaid us over a number of years to complete the last time the beach was renourished.
That was my other question was, have we used funds from TDT before for beach renourishment? Doesn't sound like we have.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, but it is allowable.
Correct.
Okay.
We have in our annual budget, we set aside $500,000 each year that we've done for the last 4 years to have the $2 million that.
Okay. So it's just money we just kind of rolled over and added to every year? Okay.
We put it in a restricted fund each year through the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilwoman?
I'm almost scared to go down this road, but as Mr. Burns and I spoke, I actually have some environmental questions about this process. So we're dredging 3 to 4 miles off in that one trench?
Yes, ma'am. We have a sandbox, that's off the coast of Pensacola Beach, and that's where the sand comes from. And we use a hopper dredger to bring that sand up onto the beach, and then a process where that could use either a mile or up to 2 miles worth of pipe that pumps the sand up on the beach. Depending on how much pipe we use, depends on how quickly we can complete the project and shorten the length of
I
the
think
time.
I've been here present for every iteration of refurbishing
Sure.
the beach. I don't know that I agree with the renourishment as but furbish maybe. Okay, so in 2002, 2003, you refurbished,
I believe that's correct.
renourished, it is.
Renourished, yes, ma'am.
I'll use your words.
It's called
Okay?
nourishment,
I know,
renourishment.
I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
I don't think it's nourishing, so.
I understand your concern.
But then in 2005, 2006, Ivan hits, and you have to do it right away again. So that's not even 2 full years before it had to be done again. So we did it 2002, 3, 2005, 6. Then we made the 10-year gap from 2015 to 16.
That's correct.
So, and now we're at 10 again.
That's correct.
Okay, so between the 2002 to 2003 to 2005, that, I'm guessing that was Opal, Aaron Opal?
It could have been.
No, that was
Aaron,
90s.
Opal,
That was,
and
I don't even
Aaron-
know what that
oh,
was.
Excuse me.
So
Aaron?
if I'm not mistaken, after Ivan, FEMA covered that because we had just done it. We got some FEMA money.
Maybe.
It's not really about who covered, but that's, Ivan was 2004, and so 5, 6 would have been the Ivan. I was just trying to think of what 2002, 3 was. That's just probably the after, I guess,
Well,
Aaron.
Our
Opal.
expert is walking up to the microphone.
I know, but so maybe from 95 to 2002, that would have
I
been
think-
the Aaron Opal that they did then?
So prior to that, it had never been nourished. So that's, what had happened is just over time, it had slow erosion back towards the development. That's where, San Souci had almost gone into the Gulf, where
I remember.
it's.
Yeah, okay, so that's the
that was prior-
2002,
Right, that was.
2003.
That was the initial state before we started beach nourishment.
So when, just since you're here.
Yep.
Yeah, don't go far, Tim.
When Frederick hit, because I'm going to go way back.
Yep.
All right. So you can't build on dunes, right? You couldn't remove dunes for building.
I can't say that in the 70s for certain. I mean, we were also driving dune buggies and other things at the beach in the 70s.
So 79
So it's, right,
was
yeah.
Frederick? Okay. So, because I looked back at this after you and I spoke, and you can in aerial pictures see where the buildings literally moved up over the entire dune line once the dune got flattened. So we moved 120 feet closer to the water from pre those storms to post. So we moved out 120 feet, and then we're asking to continue to put in essentially the same and without the dune line. And I'm kind of also perplexed that we don't have dune renourishment.
No, we have dune nourishment in every one of the beach nourishment projects where the Island Authority just completed a dune restoration project.
Okay.
The county is doing another dune restoration project next year as well. So we have a very active program to make sure the dunes stay as healthy as possible.
So then the other thing is what we do to the fishing community by essentially killing off all the small creatures on the shoreline and in the trench. So like if you look at Gulf Shores after theirs, like they're doing the whole fishing community, they send out messages, you can't count on getting fish where you used to, you're gonna have to go out and find new areas because it changes the whole thing, and then you Pompano as an example, is no longer in those areas.
So, well, the fish are still there. It's what happens with nourishment when you advance it. Basically what happens is you lose your first breakwater, and it takes Mother Nature about 2 years to kind of reshape, and then, the surfers start to get happy again because we start to get a surf break again. Because Mother Nature will reorganize it back to how it wants to be. We can't construct it in that way.
So some people say too, I think some of it is saying that we haven't studied it long enough to really understand what like some of the fishermen think we're probably doing more damage than that, right?
Well, I haven't personally heard that,
Okay.
but the microorganisms and everything else do recover very, very rapidly.
Okay, one more interesting question here.
Sure.
The more we do it, okay, so those trenches take about a decade to heal, is what the research says. When we're trenching that out there,
But-
3 or
so-
4 miles.
So, just to kind of correct, are you talking about the borrow site?
The sand
Yeah,
box.
so the borrow site itself isn't a trench.
Okay,
Borrow sites are selected.
it's flat?
They're typically actually a ridge.
Okay, so we're not
And so
doing a groove.
We usually do go 8-10 feet below, so it does end up a little lower. But those areas are selected as high ridges that are, they don't have hard bottom, they're typically, I'll call it more devoid of life that typically get valued. Those
So,
are
but
the-
we're using the same one, aren't we?
What's that?
Aren't we
Yes.
using the same location?
Yes, we have a very
Each
large.
and every time we've used the same one.
But it's not going deeper. So imagine, we have, and I forgot the sizes that we've permitted, but we start in one area and we're working across it. So this isn't a hole that's getting deeper and deeper and deeper. This ultimately is going to be an area that, once it's fully excavated, will barely be a blip. As a fisherman goes by, he'll notice a gradual decline and then a gradual increase back.
Okay, one more kind of
Sure.
interesting question here. But when we extend this out, so we start going towards the second sandbar. Sometimes completing it all the way second sandbar, sort of removing that second sandbar for a while there, right?
Well, depending on where you are, the two tails of the project, so, just the nature of the beach nourishment is it gets built out as a rectangle. And as it ages.
So they go to each state park essentially and do it on the state
You
parks.
build out straight.
Right.
And then as, over time, when it erodes, it forms essentially kind of like a bell curve. So the two tails erode, and, thankfully Casino Beach happens to be generally in the middle, so that tends to be the fattest and happiest over
Okay.
time.
When we do shorten that or change the second sandbar, do the waves not hit the shore even harder, and then thus have, this is the surfers telling me this, okay?
So-
And then you have the waves hitting the shore faster and harder, so you've got more of a tide pulling you back out in those areas. Is that not
Well, so what ends up happening is it does reshape the whole area. For purposes of FEMA, we survey out to the -24 contour. So over time, we can actually see where all this sand is. So when we fill it out, while Mother Nature's rearranging it, it does shallow it up further offshore. And so for like in cases of hurricane, those waves will start interacting with the bottom earlier than they did, say, in 1970, which will start causing those waves to crash.
Okay, and the 1.8 million cubic feet of
Stadium. So if you've been to Wahoo Stadium, it's 342 feet to left field fence, 400 to center field, 335 to the right field corner. That's all measured from home plate. So if you measure from the dune line, what we do for the 8.1 miles is we go out 300 feet. So from the dune line to the water is 300 feet. That's your ballpark. From 8.1 on the east end, which would be the Gulf Islands National Seashore, to the west end, which would be the entrance to Fort Pickens. You're going to build a wall or a fence 300 feet from the dune line all the way out. So that's what you got to hit the ball to get out the park. And like the gentleman said, what you do with the second sandbar is the sand comes past the second sandbar. So the sand that comes off the beach gets returned to the second sandbar. As a surfer, the second sandbar breaks really good right now. It's going to continue to break because what's going to happen is any sand that comes from the beach is going to be gathered and collected on the second sandbar. The second sandbar acts as the first fence or first breaker of protection. Then you get to the beach. And now you have 300 feet from the beach to the dune line. So you're slowing down the wave twice before it hits the beach.
So you're saying right now we're at how many feet from the dune line?
Well, as a surfer right now, let's say you're 150 feet from the dune line to the water, because we've lost about 50% of our sand. That sand is on the second sandbar right now. So what we're going to do, now not in all places, but what we want to do is maximize it so that we have 300 feet from the dune line to the water line. So let's say in the middle, where we're at the core, we're at 200 feet. And on the edges, we're at 150 feet. So we're only going to go out 100 feet in the core, let's say behind Jason's hotel, the Hilton, we go out 100 feet there. But on the end, Fort Pickens on the right, and on the left, Gulf Islands, we may have to go out 150 feet, 200 feet, because it's not all universal. But that's what we want to accomplish, is 300 feet from home plate to the water, the dune line to the water, 300 feet.
And the dune line is on the property?
That's where the property line ends, at the dune line to the water. So that's where it's all public beach, all the way down.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Reeves, or Commissioner? Chairman?
So essentially, you're ensuring that there's at least 300 feet of public beach accessible to the community and to tourists?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Outside of the national park.
Mr. Reeves?
Could I ask a question of you, sir? My personal environmentalists told me that if we planted palm trees along the beach, that would keep us in a better position as opposed to not doing anything except just pumping the beach back. Is there any truth to that?
So it's just generally speaking, I wouldn't recommend putting palm trees out on the beach.
Well, any kind of vegetation.
Yeah, so the areas that you want to stabilize, for example, the dune areas or areas you think are important for wildlife, putting native grasses out or other native, appropriate native plants for that region of the beach is absolutely recommended. And so we always just, when we're planting beaches, one of the things we're trying to do is make sure we got enough vegetated area for dune protection and wildlife, and then also balancing that with the needs of the recreational beach in between that and the water. So we actively manage our vegetation to try to maximize benefits for both.
Well, it would just make sense if that was what you're telling me, we have to have more room for sunbathers and swimmers and stuff.
Well, we need to make sure we have enough for the tourists that come, but we absolutely have a very
But at
active.
some point, it becomes more economically feasible to try to keep some of the beach that we have instead of just keep refurbishing. I'm just trying to help you.
Okay.
And Jim, just to your point, that's what we just did with the vegetation program that we just finished, the vegetation renourishment. So what we did, and that was at the, we had to do that by the end October 1st. So we started at the National Park and we worked our way down to Fort Pickens, renourishing by planting on Pensacola Beach. We lost a good portion of those plants, unfortunately, because we had record snow. And vegetation that you plant on the beach doesn't necessarily acclimate to snow. So we have another project that's coming up with Perdido Key, and what will happen with those plants that aren't utilized on Perdido Key, those plants will be used on Pensacola Beach. So we do have enough to continue to do the planting renourishment on Pensacola Beach, and that'll start later this year as well. We try and do that after hurricane season. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. On the 8.1, yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilman Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have $2 million, and, in my mind, this is definitely something that has a huge economic impact on our community. I walked out, my wife and I took our middle son, went and walked the beach, starting at Casino Beach, and walked west. And there's a portion down there where there's like a big drop-off. There's like a little cliff of sand down there. And it's clear that, some parts are much worse than others. You did mention that since Casino Beach is in the middle, it kind of doesn't have as much of an effect.
It's like the pier. The pier gathers the sand, and that's how it works.
Right.
Jennifer knows.
And we've got a moving target. It's always shifting. That's the great thing about barrier islands and why you probably shouldn't build on them. But we have built on it. I'm not as much, I guess, inclined for protecting residents because I think residents assume a lot of risk by building out there. I did my master's thesis on the National Flood Insurance Program back in, that was 1994. I don't even remember what my conclusion was that it was probably that wasn't really sustainable. And, right now we're facing issues with, maybe there won't be a subsidy. And it's going to be really tough for people to get insurance, especially when Citizens is saying that you have to have flood insurance. So, I feel like the residents have to assume some of the risk. I know that they are paying more for things like insurance out there. But I also know this is a huge economic driver. And when I was a child, I came out here, I was not old enough to know what was going on, but my parents told me I thought that the sand was snow. And I really would have liked to have gotten out there and seen actual snow on the sand, but the fact that it killed the plants is not a good thing. So I really think this is something that's necessary. And I also think it would be a better target for bonding than baseball fields, really. I think that project benefited a limited group of people. This one benefits a huge number. There's no doubt that the beach is a huge economic driver. And if we want to maintain it, we've got to renourish it. I know there are definitely environmental impacts from doing this, but it's one of those things you kind of have to weigh the impacts of not doing it. And I know we've set aside $2 million. I'd love to see that go up. So I'd like to see some ways that we could increase that $2 million. And I'm not exactly sure where to go from here on that particular aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have any comments, questions?
Because I'm not going to support it, even though I'm torn to support it, okay? And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be real honest here. If I support it, I can't go home to my husband.
We want you to be able to go home,
I've been married 41 years,
Jennifer.
and he lived on that beach when we met, and
You need to be able to go
and
home.
I don't disagree. I just want to be real clear here. I don't disagree with the economic driver. I get all that, but I'm still and I pulled it up last night, I've got it for you, I'm going to send it to you tomorrow.
I appreciate
But
that.
we moved over the dune line. You can see where we did it, and so when those dunes went flat, we fully moved over them 120 feet, and that troubles me. I know that we can't back people up now, but we put ourselves in a pretty precarious position. And I get this, and I am concerned. I don't know if we really do this every 10 years or every 5 years, but the trend says we're going to have to do it more and more often because it's going to go away faster. And the research says that the more you do it, the more you have to do it. It's one of those perpetuating, that's what the research says. So if you do it, you got to do it more because it will cause a stronger hit on the shore and it comes back. And so now you're into a perpetual cycle. So I hope that we start looking at something more sustaining going forward. And I hope that you all know that I want all the businesses to stay there and everything to be good, but I have to be able to eat tonight. Thanks.
I think Angelina's doing a special tonight on their 2 for Tuesdays. That's Collier Merrill would be more than happy, I'm sure, to have you down at Angelina's tonight.
I would say we could get out there and go pompano fishing, but they're probably already going to sleep now. Catch our own dinner. Any other comments?
I had a question for Stefan. I know you said we would have to drop our reserves. Can you give us how much is in reserves and how much we would have to go down and then an anticipated timeline for refilling that reserve? Oh, and if not, that's okay.
So I'm not sure if I fully understand, but what I would say right now, as part of the annual budget process for the TDT, we set aside $500,000. So maybe that's $750,000 going forward, or maybe it's $1 million. Ultimately, the council can make that decision with our future budgets. That would also require us amending our TDT reserve policy. But as far as the ask today, if council wants to allocate more than the $2 million that is currently set aside, I would recommend waiving your reserve policy. Right now, we have $4.2 million or a little more than that in our marketing reserve. Again, the first 3 pennies are the pennies that you would have to use for TDT, toward beach renourishment. There is, and of course you can't use all that 4.2, so I apologize for that. You have to subtract out 518,000. There is, in the special event reserve, we've got roughly 903,000. In the third cent, we've got 575,000. So we could come up with a number, for instance, if council wanted to contribute an additional $2 million or something like that, again, you'd have to waive your policy.
Thank you.
Did you say, oh, I'm sorry,
No.
David. Did you say the last time there was funding that, we know we got the 2 million, so now we're looking for 7.2. Last time the Board of County Commissioners, or money was borrowed out of the local option sales tax, and then as over a period of time, it was paid back by SRIA. And if you hadn't had to pay it back, you wouldn't have to ask us today, and I understand that. But is that an option that could, since we don't have as much money to be able to do it, is that an option?
Council member, of course, that's an option. And for our commissioner, I know, Commissioner, did you want to speak to?
Yes, absolutely. So unfortunately, we can't just use LOST dollars because that wasn't part of what the community voted on for the use. We do have to vote on renewing LOST in 2026. So we are going to add the wording to fund beach renourishment with the next funding that comes from LOST. My ask to the board would be that we would loan the money interest-free this time because for some reason, the last time they did it, Escambia County charged SRA interest on that loan as well, which I don't think is a good community partner. It's beach residents and it drives our tourism, so I don't know why that was voted that way, but it would be my ask that we would not do that.
And that is certainly doable.
I've talked with Tim about looking at restore dollars to help offset some of the additional cost of this project. There have been some committed restore projects that have never moved forward, former commissioners, and we know how that all works. When there's a former commissioner, sometimes those projects get decommitted. And so I don't know what funds might be available from restore.
So generally speaking, no one's been successful getting restore dollars towards beach nourishment for this type of beach
Yeah.
nourishment. But there is monies that are controlled by the board, the Pot 1, that the board could potentially put towards it. One of the kind of challenges is from the moment that the board decides that they want to do project X with Pot 1 dollars, it takes us at least a year to actually obtain the dollars. And just with the Treasury rules, it's highly discouraged for us to try to go build a project until we get that grant from them, because if they happen to throw a federal condition on it we didn't anticipate with purchasing, it's then fully ineligible. So it's, with a lot of planning and a year to 18 months lead time, it's possible the board could consider it.
So if there are some, out of Pot 1, some projects that have encumbered some of those dollars, but they have not been spent for that project, and you don't see that project moving forward in the commission, I don't know what the process needs to be if they have to vote to kill that project and free up those funds. Do those funds, for beach renourishment purposes, does the county need to go back through the process of requesting those funds that they just freed up to have them available for beach
Yes, so there's a
renourishment?
fully public process. The board actually just started it, I don't know, 2 months ago now is what it feels like. But the board proposes projects. It has a public comment period. We send the request to Treasury, they process it. And once that plan is approved for that expenditure, then we can work to pull down a grant, which takes about 8 months or so. So even, and we have had some with change of board, we've had rearrangement of priorities, but it's still a 12-plus month process from the day the board says we would like to do this. So
Okay.
with the timing of this project, it would be very difficult to try to bring those funds to bear.
If the county were to borrow, the Island Authority to borrow money from the county during the application of restore dollars to pay for this, if the county was successful at getting the restore dollars for this project, could it be used to reimburse, pay off the loan, help to pay off that loan?
So it's possible as long as we procure it as a federal project and not as a state-local project. And they've already procured it. It's basically what happens with restore dollars. If you award a project that doesn't have all of their special conditions in it, then it is completely not eligible for restore funding. So it's more of a timing issue.
Right. So, so another question about and maybe this is for Mike, the state match dollars is 50% of the project. Is it 50% of the total project, or what you've already committed, the 13.4? I mean, if there's,
So there's a
your delta
possibility
is
that-
the
excuse me, Dave.
9.2.
So there's a possibility that number can go up. That number can go up to $15,195,000.
That's the maximum?
That's the max. So right now, we're at 13.4. Okay? So if we get the number to get us to that amount, it's possible that that match from the state goes up to $15,195,000. If you add those two numbers together, that puts me at 30.4. Okay? Still short about $5.5 million, $5.6 million. But it's possible that it goes up to $15,195,000 on a match. That's the cap on the match. I only can get what I have.
Okay, right.
So
Okay.
that's why my number right now is 13.4.
When do you find out about the 15?
When I get when I get to 15,195, I can ask them to increase the amount to 15,195.
So of the 13.4, you're saying that includes Escambia County's 3.3 million?
That's correct. There should.
What is the 3.3 million? Is that the TDT 2 million?
No, sir.
Okay.
Does not include the TDC 2 million. What that is prior money that may have been allocated by Commissioner Bender. And really, it goes back to, and you've probably heard Tom Jardine when he comes up here and talks about $3.5 million that the beach never got back from FEMA money. Now, there was, and Stefan maybe be able better to speak to this, but at one point, the beach was included with Escambia County in order to get match FEMA dollars. And so that money was $3.5 million. When that money came back from FEMA, that money went into the general budget. That money never came back to the beach, even though that was for beach damage, beach cleanup, whatever it was. But that helped the county get to their matching dollars. So that money's already in the county. So maybe that's what that 3.3 is, but I know they got 3.5 because of a hurricane claim from the Island Authority. I think it's probably either a combination of that or money that Commissioner Bender may have set aside at some point for projects that he had. And that's
But it's
what that,
earmarked for this beach.
that's
renourishment.
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So with the 2 million that we already have in reserve, plus your 13.4, that gets you over your 15.19.
That's going to get me right to the number. That's correct. That'll get me to 15.2, 15.4.
So the 9.2 is shrinking already.
It is coming down like that because, you know, we want the beach to increase versus shrinking because that means everybody here increases as well.
Right.
So that's the main purpose is we put 42 to 45% of the TDT dollars comes from the beach. So we appreciate any, you guys put the pennies in, they'll add up to dollars. So
Right.
we appreciate that.
So is that state match a guarantee up to the 15 if you have
It
the
is.
15?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
So you don't have to go ask for it?
I don't have to ask for it.
Okay.
And like in the governor's budget this year is $100 million for beach renourishment. Last year it was $50 million. So it went up another 50. But you have to take into effect where all those dollars are going to go. They're not going to go the Gulf. They're going to go the Gulf Coast. They're just not going to go to us. They're going to go along Fort Myers, Naples, Tampa, and over there because of the destruction from those recent storms.
Okay, so your $9.2 million request, we already have the 2 million. You'll get the match from the 2 million from the state. So now you're down to a delta of 5.2.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a portion, any portion of that the Island Authority is willing to borrow from the county?
We haven't had any conversation about borrowing any money. You and I chatted about borrowing early on.
I'd prefer you not have to.
Exactly, and I
So that
appreciate that.
you don't
Because, you
have
know,
to come back next
I mean, that's what happened last time.
Yeah.
And I wasn't here last time. I was working for Governor Chris last time. And during the oil spill, you know, every day we were here, Pensacola Beach, because it's important to the people of Escambia County. And I thought, really, and this Mike Burns on this, you know, the people that generate the money, you're going to make the people that generate the money have to borrow the money from you and then pay it back with interest? Because we borrowed, I think it was like 8.0, 8.5, and then we paid back 7% interest on top of that money. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous for the people that generate the money to have to borrow the money so everybody else can make money.
Shame on Grover for having to make you do that, making you guys do that. Fortunately, we have a much better commissioner now in that district.
So we're willing to work with you because I know you're willing to work with us.
Yeah.
But we need that money because that money's going to, as they say, it's going to make all the boats rise. All the boats throughout the county are going to rise and fall based on what happens at Pensacola Beach. And so we appreciate you, and we appreciate working with you, and we look forward to the options. And I'm sorry taking up so much time.
No, that's
today.
okay. It's important. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think at this point, we have We've already committed 2 million, which gets a match of 2, so the delta is the $5.2 million of his request from the Island Authority. If there's interest on this board to appropriate any additional, or recommend to the county commission to appropriate any additional funding on top of what we're already committing out of that 5.2, then I guess at this time we can entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I just have one question on the 5.2. Maybe this question is both for Mike and Stefan. Is it possible to reach out to a commercial lender and collateralize a pledge of, I'm just throwing out a number, $1 million a year for 5+ years from TDC collections, future collections?
It may be. I think that would be more of a question for Stefan to answer. I mean, I think that's what Jim was asking anyway. Couldn't you go to the bank on one of the other issues and borrow the money on that? So I think maybe that's an option, you know, but I don't know if I'm the one to answer that question.
Mr. Hall? And I'm not a banker, so it's a legitimate question. If we can collateralize future projections.
It's more advantageous from my perspective not to do that. The county has no issue with using some of our cash to pay for this. They can certainly pay us back without interest over, if it's 5 years, 6 years, whatever the board agrees to. If you go to a bank, clearly you're going to pay market. It's also going to affect the county's credit ratings and things like that. So.
Oh, yeah, understood. Yeah, and just a quick comment, and I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. You know, regardless of how you feel about construction on barrier islands, I have my own personal opinions that I won't air at this council meeting. But we've bitten that apple. That Pandora's box is open, and we can't close it now. We can't move the commercial buildings. We are a tourism economy, and our #1 demand generator is the beach, the sand that we sell. So with that in mind, I would like to make a motion, and it's going to be 3 parts, if we can do that. So I move that we allocate to the Santa Rosa Island Authority for Beach Renourishment the $2 million in the current fund balance, that we further change our reserve policy from $500,000 a year to $1 million a year for beach renourishment, under the formula that $1 million a year for 10 years will get us a $10 million fund, and in 10 years we might need $10 million for a beach renourishment. So change our reserve policy from $500,000 to $1 million a year, and pledge that $1 million a year back to the county commission for a loan that they would make for the $5.2 million delta to get to the number that Pensacola Beach needs, Santa Rosa Island Authority needs to successfully renourish the beaches. I can clarify if needed.
So we have a motion and a second. Any debate or discussion? Will you repeat the third part, please?
The third part would be to pledge to the county commission from the TDC $1 million a year from the improved beach renourishment account, from $500,000 to $1 million a year. Pledge that $1 million a year back to the county commission for the loan that they render for the beach renourishment until $5.2 million is satisfied. Until the loan from the county commission is repaid. And then this council would, or the TDC would begin collecting that $1 million reserve again to use for future beach renourishment.
So the third portion is of the million, so I understand it, the $1 million that we're increasing from $500,000 to $1 million a year, the reserve policy, and rather than reserving it for the future 10 years, immediately paying off each year the loan from the Island Authority.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, do you understand it?
I believe I do. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
well, explain it to me.
Okay. So the motion was 3-part.
I want to relate it back to the 9.2 million somehow, but
Okay. So of the 9.2 million, 2 of it has already been committed by this council and in reserves. And with that 2 million, it gets an additional $2 million match from the state. So it reduces
$4
the,
million.
correct. And so it reduces the 9.2 down to 5.2, the delta that they need. And so the motion was, if the Island Authority borrows the $5.2 million from the county,
Interest-free?
interest-free, according to our commissioner,
I said I was going to ask, I'm only one of 5, but I believe there's probably enough energy behind that we can make it happen. You need to come to that meeting and speak.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm sorry, keep
That's
going.
okay. So interest-free loan, then the 2 million is allocated immediately. That's part 1 of his motion. Part 2 was amend our reserve policy from reserving $500,000 per
To $1
year
million.
to $1 million. And then part 3 was using that $1 million that we put in reserve to pay back the county loan rather than the Island Authority paying it back.
So the Island Authority's not going to come out of pocket any more than they have on hand?
Correct.
So it's
That's
not
correct,
a
Jim.
loan to the Island Authority?
Correct.
That's correct, Mr. Reeves, and that's my motion.
So in effect, what that does is in 10 years, when we're back here discussing beach renourishment, if we've only put $1 million a year into reserves, we spent 5.2 paying off the debt, we will have 4.8 in reserves.
Great. Did you know about the policy that if this meeting went to after 6 o'clock, the chairman bought everybody dinner?
I did not know that.
Well, it's a new policy.
You can put it on my
We're putting it
IPC
in
account
effect
number
right
1.
now.
So there is a motion and a second. Is there any further debate or discussion? No. Hearing none, call the roll.
James Reeves. Yes. Ashley Hoffberger.
Yes.
Shirley Cronley.
Yes.
David Bayer.
Bear?
Yeah. David
Yes.
Bayer, yeah. Charles Bayer.
Yes?
Jennifer Breyer. Brad Mullinex.
Yes.
Jason Nicholson.
Yes.
I thought you said you were going to vote no, Jason. Just kidding.
I think I said I wouldn't share my personal opinions.
All right, well, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you very
Mike.
much. Thank you, Jason.
What? Thank you. And thanks to the speakers who came today also. So last item on the, well, I'm sorry, it's not the last item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda, Pensacola Beach Gateway Project. With this, I will turn it over to our commissioner, to my right.
Thank you. I believe we have a video to be played. CMR was going to play a video. Somebody going to play a video
Is
for me?
David back there? You need
You're
a
back
second?
there. I'm getting, okay,
Just
awesome.
one moment.
So I'll go over where we're going to pull the money for this from. State funding, it has not been vetoed yet, and we are hopeful it will come through for $1.5 million. TDC has already committed $600,000. That was the money that we were going to use for the changing stations that we reallocated to this. District 4 is committing $1.1 million from our LOST pot. And then I am asking for today that we do $2.5 million, and then we're going to pull $1.3 million from toll revenue. So that would totally fund the project. And this is what it would look like.
Oh.
And this is the entrance onto the beach. So we would be demolishing the dilapidated toll booth that does not house anyone. And the beautiful arch that you're going to see would actually house the toll reading equipment for the tags. So we would be able to still do the toll by plates. And the completion of this would be before next summer and without any lane closure. So by summer of 2026, we could have a beautiful entrance to Pensacola Beach, and we would suffer no lane closures. So the landscaping, the fencing that you're seeing, the palm trees, the turtle-friendly lighting, they are estimating between $7 and $7.5 million. So as you can see, it's much more inviting, much more welcoming, and a much better piece than the current toll plaza that we have.
Do we have any more of that money from the Levin, Rinky? You know, they had a certain amount of money that
Their
they could
landscaping
spend on
trust.
landscaping and what have you.
I have talked to Robert Rinke, and he is excited to get this going, and then we would like to use some of that money to continue the landscaping down. We are also working on a traffic management plan and a parking feasibility study, i.e., how do we put a parking garage in Casino Beach parking lot, and then how would we effectively get people on and off the beach with that? So once that comes back, we'll be evaluating how to implement that, and at that point, I think would be the time to talk additional landscaping on the beach.
Did you get your answer?
How much does a parking garage cost?
We're not there yet. I don't have
About
numbers on that.
$35,000 per car.
That is accurate.
How much, actually, it's
About
40 it was
$35,000 to
$42,000.
$55,000 per car, depending on, I mean, it is outrageous. At the beginning of COVID, it was about $19,000 a car, and it has skyrocketed to up to, at times, $55,000 per car.
West Florida Hospital spent $42,000 per parking spot.
They also put it up in less than 6 months, which I think is a huge accomplishment. But that is a different project. This specifically is for the toll plaza, the entrance to Pensacola Beach. I want to give the beach residents something that they can be proud of when they pass into their neighborhood, and I want to give our tourists something that says, welcome to our community. We are happy you're here. Thank you for vacationing with us. Please continue to spend your dollars in Escambia County. We love you. Please come back next year.
So can we take this out of the 5th cent?
We can take it out of the 5th cent. Absolutely, we can. Yes.
Have we taken
Oh, we just spent
anything
it.
out of the 5th cents?
How many heads is this going to put in beds?
We have not used anything out of the 5th cent other than the roughly $10 million for the Bay Center capital, immediate capital improvements, which were over 4 years. And we have two next year and one more year after that.
Of what we've been reserving.
Correct. And current balance of the 5th cent is $8.8 million.
It's 8.8, and what, do
8
we have
point-
another 3 million commitment, or are we done with the Bay Center commitment?
So
The previous commitment?
I believe there's a little over 3 million left, but again, so there's the allocation that'll be in next year's budget, and then one more. So because it was 4
Well,
years.
But we're bringing in 4.5 to 5 million each year.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yes, each penny is bringing in 4.4, 4.5 million per year. Sorry.
So there's money
Well,
in the 5th cent.
I moved that we approved the 2.5 million, taking it from the 5th cent, 2 million from the 5th cent, and 500,000 from the interest on the 5th cent.
Before you do that, can I ask one question?
Well, we have a motion. Do we need a? we
Can
don't
I
have a
second it since it's my project?
Sure
I
you can.
second.
Yes. Okay, we have a motion second.
I just want to know that the people will know that they're going to get assessed a toll here, since it doesn't say it. Yes?
Yes, we can put up like toll plaza ahead. One of the things that we're running into now, and I know it because I've had friends that call me and they say, hey, I just got to your beach and I stopped at the toll booth, but there was no one to hand my dollar to. I don't know what to do. So I want to get
Read the
away from
sign.
that. Yeah.
Can I
There
ask?
is a sign on it, by the way.
The exchequer,
Yes, sir.
the master of the exchequer, a question.
Yes.
What is the accumulated interest on the 5th cent?
I don't want to speak for Madam Clerk, but she does not show it to me that way. I suppose I could figure it out. I don't have that information in front of me right now, but I can run and grab my computer and perhaps
Well,
figure
how
it out.
long have we had the 5th cent?
Three. It happened right before I came back here from the city, so 3.5 years, something like that? 3, 4 years?
21.
21.
Or 22.
You don't think we have 2.5 million, do you? In interest?
Perhaps.
But we've been
Maybe.
spending it on the Bay Center, so we've drawn down, so it's not earning interest. But it is earning interest probably the last couple of years at 5+%.
I just want to get the sense of the board. So did anybody second my? You did.
Yes.
There was a second. So the motion is 2 million from the 5th cent and $500,000 from the interest of the 5th cent.
Yep.
But we don't know whether or
I
not
love
there's
to spend that
$500,000 in the interest.
But we think it can happen.
So why don't we take the 2.5 million, exhaust all the interest and the rest of it from the 5th cent?
Ooh, I
I
like it.
like that better. I withdraw my motion and reframe it in that sense.
And I second.
Well, great conversation. So we don't have interest until the clerk posts those interests. So if it is ultimately the will of the council to do the 2.5 from the 5th cent, then we can move forward with that.
Well, there's a motion to exhaust the interest first and then the remainder from the 5th.
You can do it, and they'll never know it.
I mean, it goes to Fund 108 anyway, so. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion, debate? Hearing none, call for the vote. If you would, please call the roll.
James Reeves,
Yes.
Ashley Hoffberger,
Yes.
Shirley Cronley,
Yes.
David Bayer,
Yes.
Charles Bayer,
Yes.
Jennifer Breyer,
Yes.
Brad Mullinex,
Yes.
and Jason Nicholson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Reeves, for your creative motion.
I just think that I appreciate the attendance of this board for the, the longer we meet, we make less per hour, But I
Anything
think-
times zero is still zero.
I just think it's great that everybody's engaged. And to the people who have waited in the audience, they'd like to go to the dinner with us.
Yes. All right, we have, thank you, we have other business. And Councilman Barry, I did put this on your name. I know you asked questions about why I did that, but you had requested that we bring it back, so I'd just turn it over to you.
Yeah, I'd like to withdraw it, thank you.
Okay. All right, well, then the discussion of the letter of the Florida Department of Revenue sending the Chappie James to the Department of Revenue has been withdrawn. Is there any other interest in having that discussion? If not?
I'm just curious where we are. I guess we can't
Okay.
do it.
So I guess we can give an update on where we are on that. So, well, and maybe the commissioner can address it, but, so we sent the letter to the county commission. They discussed it at one of their county commission meetings and made no changes. They had a long discussion, concerns about possibly finding other funding sources for it, but at the end of the meeting, there was no action taken to change their position. Some of the conversation was about what is the city's plan to do with it, because before they allocate any funds, they want to make sure that it's still going to move forward. And obviously, you guys have discussed it. The mayor has talked about it in his press conferences about maybe move it to Maritime Park, maybe change the scope of the project without the big concrete slab. And so at this point, I believe the county commission decided it's sort of not really in it's not on their plate to move it forward. It's sort of out there waiting for others to move before they even make a decision whether they want to continue to fund it or not at that amount.
Thank you.
The county commission currently has $750,000 of tourist development tax committed to this project, even after they didn't make any changes after we sent the letter.
But they, instead of springing forward after you sent the letter, they decided to just kind of squat forward, correctly?
Squat, just wait and see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. But they didn't rescind their.
They didn't, but they didn't spring forward. They
Correct.
just kind of squatting on it. But, you know, there have been some other issues raised concerning other funding that has already been received. And I would think the county commission would want to see some clarification of that
Yeah.
before, so it may not, we may not ever have to send a letter.
Right, right. I understand the city was talking about possibly, because of in the stewardship agreement, it gives the city the opportunity to audit the organization's finances, and I don't know if the city's taken any action to initiate that or request for documents. I don't know if either one of you want to speak to that.
Not really.
Okay. I understood.
Well,
I know I have concerns about some of their financing. I looked up their tax return. Number one, they haven't done one for last year. But the prior year, they showed a $100,000 loan from their board chair on their tax return because it was a related party transaction. And they had checked the box that was done without board or any committee approval, and it was done without a written agreement in place. So we don't, from a public perspective, no one knows what the terms of that loan are because there's no written agreement. It was not approved by a board. It was not approved by a committee. That's the boxes they checked on their tax return. So I have even greater concern, not above and beyond whether or not they will actually have all of the funds to complete the project and where those funds are coming from, but why they needed to take a loan, how the chairman of the organization could unilaterally commit the organization, a charity, to debt, and whether or not it's paying, what type of interest it's paying, and he's getting personal gain from that. Even if he donates that back, it's a tax deduction for him, which again is a personal gain. So I think there's ethical issues involved in that as well, but you know, that's not for us, but I think that's something that we also have to discuss, and I believe the county commission and the city council should consider in their funding.
I will say that I think that there's never been a full, nothing has been shared to explain what took us from 500,000 to $1 million, $1 million to $2 million, and plus. Like, we keep being told that it's more and more, but we really have never seen a breakdown of the cost, and I think that's critical.
Well, and the other thing, again, you two could speak more clearly to this probably, but I think the main concern is, you know, you build a monument and then the city gets to maintain it. That's
true.
a real concern.
There's no way the city, any of us, that this does not reflect us. It's the, the entrance into the city, so, if that's where it is. Thank you.
That's as much as I know as an update. I'm okay at this point because I don't believe the county commission is actually taking any steps to spend the money. And so I think a wait and see is a good approach from us. All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments about this? Are you sure, Councilwoman? All right, hearing none. Whoa, sorry. We get to the end of the agenda, closing remarks. Mr. Reeves, would you like to start?
Well, I appreciate everybody's patience, especially the master of the exchequer. He's been here from beginning to end. At any rate, I just wanted to see if anybody added up how much money we spent since 3 o'clock. You
We
can be
loaned some of
next.
it. We loaned some of it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that's the quickest, well, maybe not any of us, but definitely the quickest I've ever spent money. Thank you guys so much for approving so many projects. I'm really excited about the trajectory of our community, especially Pensacola Beach. We've made huge strides in making sure that we have a beautiful entrance and that we're preserving the beach tonight. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I think we improved Escambia County and the beach today for some projects forthcoming that's going to create tourism in our area. And good night to everyone.
Thank you. Councilman Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to go back to the minutes, I really think our minutes need to be a factual accounting of what we do here. The ones from our special meeting clearly were not. Did not mention the motion that led to Ashley's, Commissioner, or what do I call her, council member in this body, her substitute motion. I think it's a real issue. And I've been on other boards where this has happened, where there's been a lot of just narrative in there. That's not what the minutes should be. They should be capture action, and those definitely did not capture the action that was taken. And I withdrew my item because I felt like we weren't really in the position to do anything, plus looking at the hour. But I still, I believe that they have to spend the money. That's what you said, Mr. Chairman, before we can really, before the Department of Revenue will act anyway. So we still have a little bit of wait and see. And I don't think that the council members, city council members, really know what the mayor's going to do at this point. I asked him the question in the last council meeting about, or in one of the council meetings about the Chappie James Plaza. And that's when he dropped the possibility of putting it into the Veterans Memorial Park, which I don't think anyone had talked about before. And after talking to one of the board members for the Chappie James Plaza, they were not, that person in particular thought that was not a good idea. I think part of their issue is the person that's been the mouthpiece for them for quite a while. And I think if that person wasn't the mouthpiece, they might get a better reception. And so, I'm hopeful something works there. As a veteran, I think it's important to recognize military heroes, and I think Chappie James is definitely one of those people we need to recognize. And again, it really just goes back to the source of funding. We've heard projects today, or tonight, it's tonight, pretty much, that really had a strong impact on economic development. That one, or tourist development, that one clearly, in my mind, does not. And so when we look at limited resource, we've talked about how finite our resources are in here. We've had to look at reserves and what we do with those. I think we just need to be very cautious with the people's money and make sure that we're getting the most impact for the dollars we spend in this particular body. And ultimately, we're just recommending to the county commission. But if the county commission chooses to spend dollars on something we don't think is appropriate for these, I think we have the duty to go to the Florida Department of Revenue. And if we get to that point, we will. But tonight was not the night. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say thanks, Mr. Reeves, for speaking into the microphone, because tonight I could actually hear you. A very interesting conversation, and I do appreciate, I've heard things about this board in the past, just saying, that it was not fully awake, and everyone wasn't here, that kind of stuff. And I would have to say that we come from different places, we've got different ideas, but we are all here working on it, and I am proud of this board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just briefly want to say thank you for all the people that presented, very passionate, right? And it's good to hear that energy and that focus for what they're trying to get done.
Thank you. Jason?
And I'd also like to thank Mr. Reeves for hanging in there with us. We appreciate your leadership. And I'll echo Councilman Brer's comments that I appreciate the robust nature of the discussion and debate that we have, and I appreciate further you illustrating the safety concerns that might be present in turf. And I think we saw a bit of a pivot at the dais there to go with a non-PFAS solution. So thank you. That's something that was not even on my radar. I think the number we discussed tonight and recommended for allocation is 36.7. That's a lot of money. And I think the level of debate equaled the level of recommendation. So thank you all.
Have you considered?
Go Argos.
Have you considered changing the time of the meeting where the two council people have a conflict?
Did you guys have a conflict today?
What's that?
They did not. Did you have a conflict today?
No.
For council?
You said you had some council meetings sometimes when we call.
No, actually, before I was on this board, I heard that the staff wasn't, or the people on the board were not always here, that it was not fully vetted, that, there were decisions being made without everyone here. And I have only witnessed a very attentive board, and I'm proud of that. That's all. I haven't had issues here, and I didn't have any issues anywhere else.
So you like these 3 o'clock to 6:30 meetings?
Not necessarily. I didn't miss, just for the sports people, I missed my grandsons playing baseball and
I move we adjourn.
Well, I have some closing remarks, Mr. Reeves, and I've written a speech. No, I want to thank this council tonight for this lively discussion. I think we had some really great projects on our agenda that we funded, and I think I appreciate all of the applicants of bringing those forward to us. Those are wise investments, I believe, into the future of our tourism. Although I know our governor was in town today and had some unkind words to talk about our university, I'm proud of our university, and I'm proud of what they're doing in our community, and I'm proud that they came to us today to ask us to help invest in their future, and I'm glad that we did. So thank you for that.
He really did have some unkind words.
And I'm sorry he did that.
He says there's some liberal programs, and I want to go out and see one.
I want to see him too. I want to see him too. And with that, that concludes my comments, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.